Yes, good morning. This is OTB AM. You're very welcome. Thanks for making us a part of your early morning on this Friday, the 13th of April. Dave McIntyre on the hot seat this morning with you all the way through to just after 9 o'clock. An awful lot to get through today. So much to look back on what's been an incredible sporting week, and plenty to look forward to as well in terms of what's going to be coming up over the course of the next couple of days as well. It's unlucky for some on this 13th, but delighted to say we are lucky enough to be joined by two stars in studio this afternoon, or this morning even. Johnny Ward, football and racing journalist. Thanks a million for coming in.
Great to be here, Dave.
And we've managed to drag Kenny Cunningham in as well.
You don't have to drag me in, Dave.
How are things?
Yeah, all good, all good.
How did you get in this morning?
By taxi, eventually.
Was it the taxi we booked for you?
It wasn't the taxi I booked for me. No. It's a very long story. Nobody comes out of it looking good, to be honest. So let's stay clear.
Well, it's nothing to do with off the ball.
Your Vision Express.
Well, I disagree. I disagree with that statement.
The glasses case looks like it's been absolutely.
It's been mauled. It's literally been mauled by the
hold it up for the camera there.
It's a pup.
Yeah, the dog. The dog's got hold of it. He's literally got hold. That's the third one. So I've just accepted it. It's the reality of the situation.
Asher's going on there.
No, he has. Yeah, he's a lump.
It looks lived in. Those glasses have seen some interesting times.
Absolutely.
I have. That's true. It's true.
But you know the way I wouldn't be necessarily a morning person. I always thought like Kenny Cunningham would. He'd get you going in the morning.
I bounce up. I literally do bounce out of bed. It is true.
I'm a good morning man.
The teetotal lifestyle.
Yeah.
Oh.
In fact, when my taxi wasn't there to pick me up at the time, which I was given, no names mentioned, I did consider breaking into a jog and work my way across the city. It's not too far. It's a 15-minute walk from where I am on the quays.
Still keeping yourself in good nick, so you could easily cover the 5 or 6k no problem.
Yeah, but all these restrictions now, a bit nervous. Anytime I approach Trinity College now, it's just antenna go up. I'm not allowed here. You're not allowed here. There.
Yeah.
It's proper stress levels for everybody, isn't it?
The Lewis Cross City walks are a disaster as well.
I'm not sure that applies to pedestrians.
I can't enjoy a stroll around Dublin now. I'm literally on tender hooks, walking from pavement to pavement. I don't know what's coming.
Here you are.
Yeah.
Waiting to be arrested at any moment for jaywalking.
Yeah.
A city you once knew so well. We are live on Facebook, Periscope, offtheball.com, YouTube, all of our social media channels. We're on Twitter as well, and of course you may well just be listening to us on our audio stream on offtheball.com. So do get in touch over the course of the morning through the various social media channels. This is what's coming up over the next hour and a half or so. We're going to go through the back pages of the sports papers in the next few minutes. As you know, Kenny is here. So what a week of football it has been. Arguably one of the most exciting weeks in the history of European club football, and that went all the way through to last night as well. We are going to be chatting with Alan Quinlan on rugby as well just after 8:40. It is Grand National weekend as well, so some of you who may never have a punt on a horse may well decide to have a little bit of a flutter this weekend. So Johnny and John Duggan of offtheball.com is going to be with us as well to go through what might be happening at Aintree tomorrow. And then Darren Cleary is going to join us in studio. A really interesting report that he did yesterday. The back of the news that St Patrick's Athletic have unveiled stadium plans for the new Richmond Arena, which they hope to be moving into in the next few seasons, but obviously involves an awful lot of planning, permission and development issues to be resolved before that happens. But Darren was out at St Pat's, out at Richmond Park yesterday afternoon to speak to the club's hierarchy, so we'll bring you that. Darren's going to pop into studio to talk to us about that as well. We're going to get into the papers though.
OTB AM.
In association with Air. Get Air Sport free with Air Broadband.
And so first up, this morning's Irish Examiner. Could he manage Cork? Well, Billy Morgan was asked about the potential management skills of Tomás O'Shea. Everybody assumed he was talking about Kerry, but in fact he's not. He's talking about Cork. Billy Morgan and why he wants Tomás O'Shea in the red corner. They have managed on the sideline together in Sigerson Cup football, and of course Tomás O'Shea has excelled as a player for Nemo Rangers over the last couple of seasons. That would be an interesting one. Cork in the doldrums at the moment, but could you ever envisage a day, Johnny, where a Cork man or a Cork County board invite a Kerry man in to manage the senior football team?
I think it's more likely with him than. I know he's kind of scoffed at the idea before, but you know, he's living in Cork for quite some time, strong connections with Nemo there, could definitely see it happen. He's a man with strong views on the game. Cork really are at a low ebb. Like if and when they face Tipperary in Munster, they wouldn't be. I'm not even sure they'd be favourites to be Tipperary at the moment.
Yeah, and they are due to take them on as well if Tip get past Waterford in their first. And there's a bit of an issue around that as well, which we'll get to later in the show, about scheduling and the fact that Tipperary are potentially going to have to play 2 Munster Championship matches in the space of 8 days, which kind of doesn't make much sense given how long the Championship is going to go on for. The Irish Independent. Currents fumes over Munster fixture call. So it's been moved forward by about 8 days to basically factor in the Munster Hurling League games in the Munster Championship, and Liam Kearns thinks that's not doing much for the integrity of the Munster Senior Football Championship. Why should they have to play 2 games in a week and be looking forward to a potential Munster final or the qualifiers by the end of May, when a lot of teams haven't even taken their place in the Football Championship? The other headline is Tullow Tank O'Brien revved up for return in Leinster's Treviso clash. Everybody associated with Leinster Rugby will be desperately hoping that Sean O'Brien gets through that game in the Pro 14 with Treviso tomorrow unscathed and is fit and available for selection to take his place in the side, or at least in the matchday squad for the Champions Cup semi-final with Scarlets on Saturday week. That is a game you'll hear live and exclusive on Off the Ball with Keith Wood and Liam Toland, part of our commentary team. The Daily Mail, storm clouds gather before Ulster match. It's a very interesting piece from their chief sports writer, sorry, it's the Times Ireland, the chief sports writer, Gary Doyle, on basically what's been a really tough week for Ulster Rugby. He goes in more depth as to the last 5 years and calls for the head of Ulster Rugby to step down by the likes of Stephen Ferris, goes through the fallout from the Paddy Jackson and Stuart Olding rape trial, the protests that will possibly be taking place outside the Kingspan Stadium tonight from both sides. And of course, there's a lot that's happened this week with the Ulster Rugby Supporters Club. Calls for the 2 players to be reinstated. If they're not reinstated, there may be issue over future ticket sales. The provincial sponsor, Bank of Ireland, has also been vocal this week in terms of how he wants to see a very thorough and transparent review from the RFU and Ulster Rugby as well into the behaviour of the 2 players. All is not well with Ulster Rugby at the moment, and that's before we even get into the huge game they have this weekend in the Pro 14 when they take on Ospreys tonight. Lose that and they're essentially out of the running for the playoffs, and possibly in a really awkward spot when it comes to playing Champions Cup rugby next season. In terms of what's happening on the pitch, Alan Quinlan will join us later in the show to go through that. The Herald Sport is our next paper this morning. Connolly no-show. I'm sure it has probably reached your ears this morning or late last night that after being named in the starting 15 for St Vincent's opening championship clash in the Dublin Senior Football Championship against Skerries Harps last night at Parnell Park, well, Diarmo Connolly wasn't even in the matchday squad. Now, it certainly didn't affect Vincent's. They went on to win comfortably in that game. A couple of goals from Mossy Quinn. But Mullins tight-lipped as Vincent's star fails to line out at Parnell. Not surprisingly, Brian Mullins wasn't willing to give anything away on the situation involving Diarmo Connolly. But it's an odd one, Johnny, because we had been told he was being rested by Jim Gavin. My understanding was that was the case, that Jeremy Connolly wasn't being considered for Dublin at the moment while he just worked through a couple of things off the field. We did expect him to be playing club football last night, and the fact that he's not even involved in that game, it's just going to leave to the rumour mill crank into overdrive even further, and all of this speculation that doesn't do anybody any favours.
Also that he was named, you know, that's the bit I don't really get. You know, somebody told me yesterday around lunchtime that he wasn't going to be playing, but I just assumed, you know, there are clear issues with Jeremy. The longer this goes on, the more the sort of rumour mill gets going, and you hear all this sort of outlandish stuff about what's going on with him. Nobody knows. I just hope everything's okay with him. He's such a talent. I have massive sympathy for him, because for a guy who's an amateur, he lives a life of a celebrity in many ways around Dublin. You know, if he went out for a pint, he finds it very hard to enjoy himself because people are plaguing him, be they supporters of him or opposition supporters who are going to rile him. Obviously, he's a tough character, but he's going through a very, very challenging time now, and it's tough for the Dublin players when they're asked to talk about it, because they don't really know what to say, and I genuinely believe they don't actually know what to say. They're obviously towing the party line, but something needs...
We've no idea what's going on.
Clarity, really.
I think you're right. Like, whatever happens, whether Diarmo Connolly plays for Dublin again, or whether he never plays for Dublin again, or if we never see him in a Vincent's jersey again, you just want it to be okay. You just want whatever's going on off the field.
The most important thing, you know, overall is Diarmo Connolly's well-being. Yeah. And at this stage, one can only speculate. But, you know, wouldn't it be a great story if he did arrive back in the Championship in Dublin's hour of need, if they ever have an hour of need? Well,
they did have an hour of need last year when he arrives off the bench and kicks one gorgeous score, makes another, and it was just a microcosm of how important he is to the Dublin team.
He's probably he's the most complete forward I think I've ever seen. Left and right, it makes no difference. Some physicality, class, eye for a pass. What can you say about him, you know? And it's just going to... I'd say Jim Gavin just kind of wants this nipped in the bud now, because it's a distraction for Dublin as well. They don't necessarily need him, but they need this to end, really. They need him there or not there, but not in this kind of grey area that we've had for so long.
Yeah, I think Dublin football does need Diarmo Connolly, and maybe Diarmuid Connolly does need Dublin football, but either way we hope that it resolves itself and that whatever is going on off the field in Diarmuid's life is resolved and that he can leave a happy and content life in the weeks and months to come.
The last thing, Dave, and Kenny will attest to this, life goes by quickly. And that shelf life you have where you can play for Dublin in Croke Park in front of 82,000 people, it goes by very quickly, and Diarmuid probably needs to grasp that, my time is running out a little bit as well, I'm getting on, and he needs to, notwithstanding that I don't know what's going on with him, he needs to realise that this game will be over very, very quickly.
It's not like he hasn't eked out an awful lot of from his career, though, in the years that he has.
Hardly a career waste up until this point. I take your point.
I'd like to prolong it, though. I'd like to, because it must. There's nothing like playing, and you want to prolong that as long as you can. And he's good enough to play for.
But he says to me, better than me. He says to me, he is that type. You know what I mean? So kind of focused and so fixated in terms of what he wants to achieve. So I'm sure that's what's actually driving him forward, like to resolve these issues if they are of a kind of personal nature or whatever they are. And I think really people just have to almost kind of one of those things, just leave it alone, not to keep digging, and just hopefully, like you say, he resolves those things and just focuses again on his football. Clearly he's a huge talent. Yeah,
the last thing he needs is us sitting here speculating on the whys and the wherefores of what might be going off the pitch. The Mirror this morning, no-go Salah. Klopp shrugs off Rail's interest in striker. He loves it here. There's undoubtedly going to be interest in Mo Salah.
How much is he worth? I was just saying, he's 25 years of age. He's in the top 3 in the world, arguably, at the moment.
Well, if you're talking 100 million, I don't think it matters with Harry Kane. Certainly Mo Salah is now in that same bracket, given the form.
But he's probably worth about 200 million, you think, in today's.
They're not going to be cashing in the near future. That's an absolute certainty.
Well, they certainly don't need to. You would think now that they've
got
the Coutinho money and they're certainly going forward with that front 3. I would imagine Mo Salah, but he strikes from his own personal point of view, looks as settled as he ever has been in his career. He has found his place.
Yeah, he looks content and looks like the lad who's would be ambitious. Of course he is, but he looks as if already he's really bonded with that football club. The relationship between him and the supporters and the manager,
that's a big deal as well,
teammate.
Isn't it?
But it's a factor where it has to be when you want to keep these players. Ultimately, these players of that nature, of the quality that he is, if they want to go, they go, regardless of the length of the contract. If he wants out, if he's not happy, you got to get rid of him. You can stamp your feet, you can threaten this and that, but ultimately you got to show him the door.
Can't see that happening.
They're almost a force of nature, but that's what I'm saying. I look at him and I think, well, no, Liverpool have been good to him so far. I think they'll look after him again. I'm sure there'll be a contract extension on the table, if not this summer, certainly at the end of next year, even though they probably don't have to do that. So I think the club will endeavour to look after him, and he just looks to be settled and enjoying his football and at the right place.
And he's never played in an offensive system that is just so enriching for him as a player. It's just
not in Italy.
Not in Italy, but not for Chelsea either. It must be just so enjoyable what he's just playing with Firmino essentially, and obviously Manny, but particularly Firmino.
Yeah, and the ethos of the manager, well, how he likes to play his football, his direct style of football, is get it back to front quickly, get in behind, this kind of high energy, dynamic football. That's the type of player that he is. Doesn't want to overcomplicate the game, doesn't want to come, drop into the pockets, have too many touches on the ball. He wants to get in behind you, he wants to get into the space and hurt you, score and create goals, and that's the type of player he is. I think that suits Klopp's philosophy in terms of how he wants to play, not overly complicate the game, get the ball back to front quickly, plenty of energy around the pitch and a real clinical edge to your football high up the pitch, and he kind of epitomises
he's just seriously quick with everything he does. He just does it very quickly, there's no delay.
We'll get into it a little bit more. The one thing I have noticed with him this season, yes, he was scoring a lot of goals.
Hair, you got to notice the hair.
If you had Kenny, what a player you could have been.
Hair, exactly. Obviously someone follically challenged like myself, I could appreciate good hair, absolutely.
Johnny's this morning.
Johnny's doing all that. He's a bit of style. He's got a little bit of. I'm not a big fan of people who spend too much time on their hair, and I'm going to roll back. Now, Salah strikes me a bit like myself. He bounces out of bed in the morning, whoosh.
Doesn't need to do much.
Oh, he's gone. Whereas yourself, I'd imagine, spend a little bit more time in front of the bathroom mirror.
Half a minute or so,
Half a minute, really.
It looks to me like Johnny didn't make much of an effort this morning.
Bit of product in there as well. A bit of product in there as well. Look,
I'm not gonna name it, but
you got to make the best of what you got, Johnny. I don't blame you for that.
The back of the Irish Daily Mail this morning. This is going to go on till well after 9 o'clock with these two clowns to my left, so there's plenty to look forward to. Back of the Irish Daily Mail this morning. The main story is don't kill Kane. Pochettino comes to Starman's defence. Interesting backlash against Harry Kane's claim that he got the goal last weekend. It was a game I was at, that free kick from Christian Eriksen. Kane insisted, flicked him on the shoulder on the way through, and look, as all good strikers do, you claim the goal. I don't see why anybody should have a major issue with it. I wouldn't imagine Harry Kane would claim a goal that wasn't his. I don't think he is that kind of a fella.
Saint Harry, God forbid.
I just don't think he'd bother. Why bother?
He might have thought he got a touch. Doesn't actually mean he did get a touch. Have you seen it? I haven't seen it.
To me,
did you say that?
There's no difference in him thinking he got a touch and actually having got a touch.
Well, there is to the fact whether he should actually awarded the goal. There is a difference because he physically didn't get a touch. He should.
But in his own mind, if he feels he got a touch,
is it just the philosophy of a goal scorer?
Goals, clearly.
I think so. Yeah.
It's just a goal scorer's mindset, which is fair enough. You have to have this. As a player, he's you can't knock him at all. His attitude, everything he does. So I'm willing to forgive him.
Forgive him for what?
For if exactly. Actually,
you get this. You get this in the dressing room. The lads, my goal is your goal, a little bit of crack, and that's all good. But for that actually come out in the public domain and this be kind of played out, I find it a little bit cringe, to be honest. I
brought this up to you before. How many goals did you get in your career? None,
where's the relevance? Where's the relevance to this? I mean, this is coming out left
entire career.
Help me out here.
How many goals?
Relevance
there was no link there. There was no reason.
0 or 1. Which was it?
If you were a centre forward yourself,
you're wrong. Do your homework. It wasn't 0 or 1. So there you go. Straight back at you.
The relevance is if you were a striker yourself, you might be coming to this conversation from a completely different view.
Days coming. We're getting tag teamed here between
the other story in the Irish Daily Mail this morning has been written by Hugh Farrelly, and you can see the tag on the top. The only way Irish rugby can move on is to move these players on. Obviously referring to Paddy Jackson and Stuart Olding. It is a thought-provoking piece from Hugh Farrelly, basically saying that the review from the IRFU and Ulster Rugby has put them in a position where they should find the players in breach of their contracts and that they have brought the game into disrepute, and that the only way to avoid more controversy, more focus, demonstrations, protests is for Paddy Jackson and Stuart Olding to actually move on from Irish rugby. Whether or not you agree with that is something you probably have to ask yourself, but do get in touch with us. Let us know what you think. It's certainly something that may well come to a head in and around the Kingspan Stadium tonight, because there are 1 or 2 protests planned ahead of the Ulster Rugby match with Ospreys. It's a crucial Pro 14 game, as we've already mentioned, but there are people on both sides. It's been a tumultuous week up in Ulster, and when the results of that IRFU and Ulster Rugby review come out, whichever way it comes down, whichever side it comes down on, there's probably going to be further inquiries and protests and fallout from it. So that story is going to run and run, unfortunately. That's the papers from my end. Johnny Ward, what have you got for us?
I guess I'll start with the Sun. Now the Sun has obviously Diarmuid Connolly. Where's Diarmo? But it has a lovely piece about Harry Redknapp's trip to meet the London footballers ahead of their clash against Sligo, where basically they have a big photo of Harry and the squad, and obviously poor old Harry Kane gets moan goal. I think it's a little bit harsh, isn't it?
No, I think it cap fits.
There you go. Central defenders cap on again.
The Star has more Harry Kane. It also has Brendan Rodgers in the trap roar telling Celtic to relax, and we have obviously Klopp on Salah, but they've excellent League of Ireland coverage, and they've Pat Dolan talking about the new proposed stadium, and Garrett Kelleher's picture there, and Pat Dolan says my only issue is I'd have a 20,000 seater stadium, not 12, which is very Pat Dolan-esque. But they also have he also talks about Watford and the great work they're doing there. But in fairness to Pat, I do remember about when they played Celtic in '98. Shortly after that, he was proposing this move to St Michael's and a big new stadium, and Pat was always ambitious, and he was ambitious enough to know that the League of Ireland could be a lot better than it was, and maybe he's been a bit avaricious here, but
I think it's a really exciting project. I don't know the detail of it. I just read a little bit yesterday as well. I was in the city, but even just talking about a 12,000 all-seater stadium, I mean, that's the kind of talk that we've been looking for, like, you know what I mean? Somebody looking at the bigger picture. And
you need to look at the bigger picture. Yeah. You can't say just, okay, Pats get like 1,500 average support, so let's build a 2,000 seater stadium. There's a massive catchment area there, and this ground should transcend St Patrick's Athletic, should be available for European games, for other clubs, even for other sports, you know, potentially. But obviously we'll talk about that later. The Times has an interesting piece with the Irishman helping to light the MLS flame in Atlanta. These two guys basically heavily involved in the MLS over there, and Ronaldo, who obviously works out in the gym more than Kenny and I. Feature there. And finally, the Racing Post has Johnny Ward's
pretty disciplined.
Johnny Ward's selections for the night, which includes a bet on Shamrock Rovers live on Air Sport to beat Bows.
Okay.
So a lot of people.
What can you get Rovers at tonight?
4-7. A lot of people accuse me of being very anti Shamrock Rovers. but I'm actually not. I just think that they're a club they're a very big club, and they should be maybe achieving more than they have, although I expect in the future they'll become the predominant club in the League of Ireland.
At 7-4 on.
Yeah, not a great bet, but
it's a Johnny Ward bet. I'm not sure.
I have some other selections as well in the other games, so pick up the Racing Boats. And obviously, we should mention as well, Sunday the 13th, the day before the Grand National, loads of coverage of the second day, and we had a great first day at Aintree. My bite was unbelievable, and day 2 today. We'll have some selections later in the show.
You've got a long day ahead.
I do have a long day ahead, yeah, culminating in watching a bit of Bows and Rovers later on.
There you go.
And a good sleep, because this early rising is tough going. I'm telling you.
Straight back to bed for you after the show this morning. It has been a tumultuous week in football. We're going to go through it with Kenny. So many big results Tuesday, Wednesday and last night. Kenny was on Air Sport last night discussing Arsenal's draw in Moscow. So they've made their way into the Europa League semi-finals, their first European semi-final in 9 years. But one of the other stories that came to the surface this week was Mick McCarthy stepping away from Ipswich Town after 5 years in charge. Good times, some bad times in between. And yesterday on the Keith Andrews show, he had Stephen Hunt in studio, and they were giving their thoughts on Mick McCarthy's departure from Portman Road.
Where does he go from here?
Oh,
he says he wants a job, like literally
tomorrow.
Yeah,
that would be him.
He'd be him. There'd be a lot of chairmen out there thinking safe pair of hands, knows what he's doing, see the passion is still in him, the hunger to work, hunger to achieve.
Low maintenance.
Yeah,
but in terms of what he is, and managers sometimes can be asking for this and that. He'd tell me a budget and I'll work away with it. That's what he'll do. He comes with obviously his loyal assistant Terry Connor, who he trusts, and as he said himself in the interview, he'll be with him, and they'll be missed in Ipswich from the training ground, from the staff, from the staff at the ground, the way he is with people.
It's going to be a big change at that club, because I was there before Mick. Mick took over just after I was there on a half-season loan. You were obviously there, was it a couple of years?
Yeah.
There's going to be, because there's been a relative kind of security about the club in those years that Mick has been there, 5.5 years. You know as well as I know, when you get a manager now in place that is a bit of a gamble maybe, things can go horribly wrong. Look at Sunderland, Birmingham nearly went down. They look like they're quite safe now with Gary Monk in charge. I'm with you. Be very, very careful what you wish for.
Yeah, that was from the Keith Andrews show yesterday. You can watch that back on YouTube. Don't forget OTB AM brought to you this morning with Air, the home of Air Sport. Get amazing live sporting content free with their broadband. All managerial stints come to an end at some stage, Kenny. Very few.
Death and taxes.
Yeah. And very seldom does it end in a way you'd like Alex Ferguson in 2013 walk away after winning a Premier League title. But it's kind of sad that Mick has left the way he did, and he's branding the fans pathetic for their behaviour towards one of the substitutions he made during the week. And
young Barry Cotter as well, wasn't it?
Yeah.
Dave, who actually, I worked with Barry, looked very briefly with the under-19s. Barry was very raw. He wasn't just breaking into the Limerick squad at the time. We brought him into the squad for a couple of games. And really great attitude, the young fella. Really wanted to learn and develop, had a huge amount to learn, obviously, but I just read, obviously, he'd made his way over to Ipswich. Then to read, he actually got an opportunity the other night. I was delighted for him. I don't know the circumstances, it's just the fact he was substitution. He was substituted. I don't know where the fans were. Obviously, you want to see young players come on, whether he took a young player off. But obviously it's deeper than that, like you're suggesting, mixed relationship with the fans. I watched the game against Norwich, which is a huge game. The rivalry between Ipswich and Norwich.
I was going to mention that.
Some time ago, and
it was the celebration.
Yeah, it was perfectly obvious. Like obviously Mick there was a bit of
kind of went like this to his own
supporters when they actually scored,
and subsequently conceded an equaliser, which was like, oh god.
So I remember watching that particular moment that you're talking about, and looking at it thinking, Mick would know by then. Mick,
the end is nigh.
Yeah, you've got to go now. It's it's obviously got quite toxic there, and it is a shame because I think he's done great there in terms of, and I always assess a manager in terms of how successful he's been, not in terms of the trophies he's put in the cabinet, but just in terms of what he's got out of it. Has he got the best out of players available to him? That's not the only criteria you can use.
They were shambles when he took them over,
and he had to
pretty much no money to spend in the time.
Yeah, he's had to cut Dave even players' wages. He's had to shop around. He's looked the market, obviously League of Ireland as well, just in terms of Barry Carter as well. And I think he's done great team spirit there. One season in particular on the periphery of the playoffs, there's been a little bit of a drop off, but that's kind of understandable for the reasons that we're saying. So yeah, it's a shame, but Mick's experienced enough to know invariably this is how it ends at football clubs, and I think he is getting out at the right time. There's nowhere else to go.
I've been heavily linked. It doesn't look like his enthusiasm has waned in any way. He's been heavily linked with the West Brom job.
Wow.
He's leading the book. He's pretty much anywhere I've looked. He's been the big
I'll be honest with you. I looked at Mick hasn't managed Leeds, is he? I mean, Leeds would be a bit, you know.
You want to be going in there though with that owner?
Yeah, no, exactly. It's true.
Likely to end that well either.
But I think a club like Leeds with Mick's kind of background, that type of job, Leeds is still a type of club. Sunderland's the same. When Chris Coleman took that job on, Dave, people are saying, "What's Chris Coleman doing? Hey, what's going on upstairs? The board, he wants to sell the club. Don't touch it." But there's certain clubs, as a manager, coach, wherever it is, you're just immediately drawn to it. Just the nature of the club, how big a beast it is, the potential that's at the football club. You just can't. You're almost drawn to it. You can. Those factors suddenly just push them to the side. Well, we got dodgy. He's a bit temperamental, a bit eccentric. You don't quite. You push that to the side because the club almost sells itself. I think Sunderland's one of those.
Leeds.
That's why Chris Coleman, and I think Leeds as well, in terms of untapped potential. Like, my God,
but aren't you better off taking over a club that's just been relegated with all the parachute payments? Financially, you're going to have more clout than maybe certainly he would have had at Ipswich than most clubs who are going to be in the Championship.
No, you're right.
Season.
It's a fair area, but you look at that almost dispassionately, aren't you? From Mick's point of view, like I said, in terms of where he's coming from and his family background in that part of England, and a club like that, Leeds. I know he's like a Barnsley lad. Don't get me wrong. Like, you know, I know he's association.
Still a Yorkshire boy.
Barnsley as well. Yeah. But there might be a process outside Leeds if they give him the job. I don't know. I don't think so, because Mick's kind of widely respected in those circles.
His longevity is insane. Like, he's been basically in a job consistently for how long now? Like, it's
since he took the Millwall job in '92.
Yeah, he's barely had a break.
Me debut. Yeah, he's a good eye for a player, Mick. Good eye for a player.
Got it in there, Kenny.
Barry Carter's in good company there. Give him some good Irish young talent.
And then you were a stalwart of his Irish team as well.
Then he saw me. Then he saw me a couple of years later.
So there you go. Put the money on Kenny Cunningham to be the West Bromwich Albion assistant manager.
I'm not sure. Would you make it as a coach? You're just a bit too mad, are you? Or that doesn't. Not a bad thing either.
Yeah, you better expand on that, Johnny. Like, don't leave that hanging. Like, you know what I mean? That could come back to haunt me. I think, like you said, I mentioned about working with the 19th just off air with you there. It's great. I love working with players. I love the dynamic of the dressing room, how it works. I did as a player, and
you like working with young players?
Coach. It doesn't. Young players, yeah, I think so. In terms of, I think they're willing to learn. They want to learn. Most of them, anyway. Like I was telling you earlier, the experience I had with our under 19s, great. Great talent, and working with a league group of players, whatever level, 17s, 19s, and even at professional level is fantastic. It's a great opportunity to have, and yeah, I enjoy working in that type of environment. And you're right, you need different characters. The dynamic has to be right in the dressing room. I was always aware of that as a player, and even more so as a coach. You have to play your part. You have to open yourself up a little bit to the dressing room and make a contribution. I found that early in my career as a footballer, you either take a step back or you take a step forward and engage with the group and kind of make a contribution in terms of the atmosphere inside the dressing room, the kind of dynamic within the football club. So,
would you manage the League of Ireland?
Would I manage the League of Ireland? The whole League of Ireland?
That'd be a job. Would you manage in the League of Ireland?
I would certainly consider. It hasn't been an option for me some years previously, just in terms of I'd have to make a big commitment over here in terms of time. But I have to say, going forward, I'm a big fan of the League of Ireland. I enjoy watching the football over here, and the young talent you speak about, that's always been in abundance within the league. I was up at Derry City there last week, speaking to a few of their players, Ronan Hale in particular, who's on loan from Derry City, I worked with again in the under-19s as well. Belfast boy, yeah, some real great young talent up at Derry at this moment in time. They're very excited about some of the young players to have. Ronan in particular, who's an absolute goal machine, is a real talent as well. So, yeah, when you're around and you're talking to these people, and even being up in Derry for a small period of time, I was up there, it was a day in aid of the Ryan McBride Foundation 1 year anniversary, and it was great to be in the city around those type of people, and even that kind of football club. I think it's a special football club, Derry, in terms of the commitment they make to young talent in the city, and just the nature of the club. I don't know what it is. I mentioned it when I was up there, Dave. I don't know if you feel the same. As a Dublin person growing up, my experiences with Derry in the mid to late 80s, them coming down to Dublin and the high they were on, the numbers they brought with them, the colours, everybody wearing the jersey. It really struck me at the time, wow, this club is special. It kind of stands alone a little bit. You can make that argument for a couple of other clubs around the place. Cork City pretty much have their own identity. Dundalk under Stephen, the kind of how well they've been doing. So it's great. You talk about the new stadium in St. Pat's. We're so used to people maybe talking it down in terms of like what we're lacking. Oh, this is a disgrace. That it's amateur night. But we have to look at the bigger picture sometimes, flip it on its head a little bit, and look at what's good about the league. And there's so much good get out there, in particular the young talent, I feel, and which has always been there. So yeah, to answer your question, yeah, I certainly wouldn't rule out for that reason, because I'm a fan of the league, and I enjoy working alongside that type of talent.
Okay, that's interesting. We'll see where Kenny pops up. And
Kenny Shields is worried now. He wants to Derry John.
No.
Kenny slams Kenny.
Certainly not at the moment. He's doing a wonderful job.
I haven't been up to the Brandywell since it was redeveloped. I was up
Love
there.
the Brandywell.
Yeah, I was strutting my stuff up there.
Kevin Kilbane got injured, didn't he? Again.
Oh, let's not go. Do we really want to go there? Twinkle toes, Kilbane. Yeah. You know somebody actually inviting. He's playing in a manner you think he's inviting tackles here. The way he's carrying himself, like, you know what I mean, in terms of a little bit of show a bit of arrogance, like, giving off that aura to people. That kind of rubs people up the wrong way. Dave,
couple of step overs too many.
I know that'll get back to Kevin. These two are tight. I'll definitely get back.
We're live on the radio and several other places as well.
He's bought a new scooter as well, which is a huge development. He's going to be going around Dublin.
What are you saying? Midlife crisis, Johnny? Is that what you're saying?
Actually, yeah.
Oh, come out and say it.
What a week it's been, Ken. What a week it's been.
Wow, yeah.
Where do you start? Let's start with City Liverpool and get your thoughts on how you feel that second leg went. Obviously, City were in a major hole going into that second leg, and they needed the early goal, which they got. And then you could almost say the entire tie comes down to that disallowed goal.
No, not for me.
That goes in, surely Liverpool are rocking.
We'll never know. We argue till the cows come home, but no, not for me. I think that it wouldn't have changed the tie. Even 10 minutes before
2-0 up before half time.
Yeah,
all the momentum.
No, I think physically level still would have dropped second half. Liverpool would have upped it. Their passing wasn't good enough in the first half. Liverpool, the last 10 minutes of the first half, they just began to strung a couple of passes together, and when they did, they literally cut through Manchester City's midfield and got to the edge of their box very quickly. And I just felt as if there's more to come from Liverpool. They're growing into this game, and that drop off from Manchester City's second half physically, which we've seen the previous few weeks, I always felt Liverpool were going to score, whether it be 1 or 2 goals, and Man City were never going to score whatever the 5 goals required.
Even in a week where we've seen how important momentum has been with Roma, with Juventus. You just get a run on a team.
But this is different teams, different circumstances. I don't really see the comparison. I understand the comparison that you're making, but I don't think it's relevant. It's about Liverpool, where they at this moment in time in terms of their form, physically how they're looking, and Manchester City on that little bit of a dip. Just in terms of, I wouldn't say necessarily confidence, but in terms of maybe the slight frailties which they've had all season, and ultimately have been exposed at the highest level in terms of the soft centre that they have in the centre of their defence. Otamendi in particular, unfortunately, has come back to bite them in the backside, and Liverpool will be good enough to expose it. And Liverpool at the stage of the season now look as if they're actually getting better and better. In terms of their football, in terms of their physical condition, they're looking strong, fast, dynamic.
And that's the opposite of where City seem to be, isn't it?
Well, that's what I'm saying.
It's another game where they haven't scored beyond the 50th minute. That's a long period of time now since they've been able to finish games strongly. I wonder is the entire season catching up with them.
It's very deflating, isn't it, as well, because they've been on such a kind of a whirlwind, and now it's like, well, we win the league. So what, like?
But you have to find out why. I'm talking about like frailties in the team. I'd point to Otamendi. It's always been a problem. I'm very surprised he played over the last week. I'm looking at John Stones. He's disappeared. I don't know why. So that's easy to rectify. Otamendi's not good enough, he's making mistakes, get him out, get a top class centre half, and that's easy. But the point that Dave makes in terms of, well, physically what's happened, their physical condition, that's just dropped off. That's not such a quick fix, that's not easy to resolve. Guardia's going to have to sit down with his coaches after sports science department and say, look, what's going on here? Let's crunch the numbers in terms of what's going on here with the players in terms of physical drop-off. Is it too much time? The intensity that they're playing at, the kind of rotation. Guardiola talks about the type of football he wants to play, how he needs maybe the type of squad that he needs in terms of numbers to get that type of rotation, because it's difficult to play at that level, that intensity.
And I think what you're saying as well is people don't realise that to maintain that intensity in the second half, it's like, everything changed because they didn't score and Liverpool got an equaliser. But for Man City to actually play at that level in the second half was asking a Herculean effort.
But for me, the second goal would have
It would have given an impetus.
It does an awful lot for the mind when you're going in 2-0 up at half time.
The first goal, there was a clear foul on Van Dijk. You know, I mean, it was an absolute blatant foul, so you can argue it either way.
On Van Dijk?
It was an absolute pushed him off the ball.
I couldn't even see the contact. Well, you're not allowed to make contact with somebody.
He pushed him. It's not even a tackle. He pushed him after the ball.
Look, I think it's irrelevant. I think a Liverpool team, Dave makes point of a second. The Liverpool team 3 months ago had to concede the second goal going to the second half. I would have said, yeah, potentially they're in trouble here, because that Liverpool team of 3-4 months ago was unable to sit deep and sustain pressure and keep out opposition teams for long periods. This Liverpool team is different. The emergence of Van Dijk in the centre of defence, the calmness he's given to that defensive unit. I'd even reference Oxlade-Chamberlain in midfield, his energy, dynamism in there. James,
his career's revived. His career's revived at Liverpool. He really
has been revived, but it's always been there.
It's a new player though, almost.
Yeah, no, it's always I wouldn't say a new player. I think it's always been there. Those qualities that you're seeing now, Johnny, they've always been there. Wenger just hasn't been utilising them.
You were a huge fan of him before he left Arsenal.
Yeah, I was.
I raised an eyebrow or two, but you've been proved right.
I got ridiculed. But I was making the argument for Mourinho buying this lad as well in the summer at the price that he went for, because Mourinho's preferred system of 3 in midfield with Matic sitting, Pogba on the left, I felt they were one short. For me, Herrera, Fellaini weren't good enough, and Oxlade-Chamberlain alongside Pogba in the advanced area of the pitch playing as 2 number 8s with Matic behind them. For me, that would have been a strong 3, and they wouldn't have had to break the bank to get him, and that's Mourinho's preferred system.
He's a hell of a passer as well. If he actually, he's such an eye for a passer, you don't really see.
But it's more so his ability to travel with and without the ball at pace over 10-15 yards, break the lines. Liverpool can do it with kind of Henderson, can pop little passes in there. But he's the only one who can pick up the ball and travel and actually break the lines in possession of football. That dynamic speed over 10-15 yards, they haven't got too many of them. Naby Keita is going to arrive again in the summer, similar type of player, kind of high energy player, dynamic player in that central area of the pitch. So for Liverpool, it's only actually getting better and better going forward. It really is. They've got to be challenged. I know it's a huge gap at the moment between them and Manchester City, but I'm telling you, they can really they can close that gap with one summer spent.
On 2018 form, there's no gap. On 2018 form, more or less since Van Dijk came, there's no gap.
Well, they've played them 3 times once they got over that 5-0 beating at the Etihad early in the season, and they've beaten them 3 times. And they've scored a lot of goals against them. They've managed to score, 11 goals in the 3 games?
There's a defensive aspect to them as well, Dave. They're so comfortable now.
Second half I was very impressed.
Just when they bank up now, they look comfortable. They're comfortable in their own skin.
Well, what's behind that for you? Because the easy way to look at it is that they spent 75 million on Virgil van Dijk, and he has been the panacea, the silver bullet that has been the resolution to all their defensive issues. But Karius looks a lot more confident, and then something that Stephen and Keith were discussing in the Keith Andrews show yesterday was the departure of Philippe Coutinho has brought a bit more balance to the Liverpool team, that Jurgen Klopp wants to play with this front 3 of Firmino, Mane and Salah. They can survive as an entity almost to themselves because they're so dynamic, and that allows him to play 3 solid bona fide central midfield players in behind them, which has afforded a lot more cover to the back 4 and by extension Van Dijk and Karius, which maybe wasn't possible when he wanted to play Coutinho and those 3 attacking players at the same time. Yeah, absolutely. I think when you play Coutinho as one of those kind of midfield 3, and Klopp plays the same pretty much as Guardiola in terms of that kind of V-shaped in midfield. It's the system generally which Mourinho likes to use but has been able to use at Manchester United this year. He's been caught in between a midfield 2 and a 3. But you're right, when Coutinho is in there, out possessed of football, could you hang your hat on him in terms of getting around the pitch and making tackles, tracking runners? Not so much. And you're right, you look at the presence of Milner now in particular of late, him plus Henderson in that central area of the pitch and
with Oxlade-Chamberlain.
Serious legs.
In terms, exactly. Serious legs up and down the pitch, Dave. Milner as well has got an experienced player, clever in terms of how he positions himself as well. So now that back 4 unit's getting a lot more protection in front for me, which was a big factor. And also the presence of Van Dijk. And if you can see it now, the likes of Lovren of the past couple of weeks, looks a different player. The 2 fullbacks, absolutely rock solid. I still have question marks about the goalkeeper. And going into the summer, if we're going to spend money big in any one area of the pitch, and looking at their outfield players, I don't think there's one area I'm thinking they've got to go and buy a right back.
He looks better though, Karius, doesn't he?
He looks better, but I'm not convinced. And I think if they have to spend some serious money this season, for me, it'd be on a top goalkeeper, and I'd get one of them out. I'd get Mignolet out, get money in for him, keep Karius as a backup, and go and get a top quality goalkeeper. And
I was watching Atletico Sporting last night, and Jan Oblak was brilliant.
You're not going to get him. Not going to get him. He's huge. But I tell you who they would get. I was having this conversation with Shay last night. Jack Butland. Stoke City has a fair chance they've got to go down into the Championship. If that's the case, there might be a release clause in that lad's contract. Even if not, there's a fair chance he's going to be moving potentially England's number one. He's then going to be playing in the Championship.
And his reputation will certainly be enhanced if he does manage to start for England in Russia and has a big World Cup. He'll add another 20 million to the
and he's an upgrade. He's certainly an upgrade, I think, in what they've got. So I think there's an easy solution there for him. English goalkeeper, been in the league, experienced in the league, less of a risk factor in terms of bringing that type of goalkeeper in. If they can reinforce in that area of the pitch, Liverpool in great shape. It's nice to see there's so
many English players as well. You know, it's not like I hate watching teams that have no players that have anything to do with not only the club but the country, and they've really strong English players in that team. Like they're, you know, because I always think you're
sprinkling.
A sprinkle, but it's still in today's football. It's actually quite a lot, particularly in the back four and the defence.
Homegrown as well. I mean, Alexander-Arnold is the greatest example.
That have four.
That's good.
11, which
that's good.
By the standards of most leagues, that isn't bad.
It's good, and they're pivotal players, you know. And clubs should really be. I think it should be mandatory that you have players that have come through your youth system. I think because it's and for the fans, it's big that you have players that actually can represent the city and are not just fly-by-night merchants who come in for a lot of money.
I wonder if Gareth Southgate look at James Milner and think, I would love to have him in my squad for the World Cup, and if there's anything he might do between now and the World Cup to change that.
I think on present form, I think there's a fair argument for that. Yeah, would he actually make it in terms of how Southgate's shaping up the team in terms?
Mightn't get into the team, but a great guy to have around, which I guess is not what James Milner's interested in.
I think that's the point. Would James Milner at this stage of his career want to go and play a big part in England's squad in consideration of his career so far? I'm not exactly sure about that, but I've been really impressed with Milner of late. Just fitted in nicely into that kind of dynamic in those midfield areas. And Alexander-Arnold, you mentioned, talk about homegrown. Even a single player like that, local lad coming through, is absolutely huge. The feel-good factor that you get from the team, not towards him, but from the whole team. The crowd absolutely can't get enough. I've seen it at loads of different clubs I've been at. Bring a couple of the supporters, want to see the young kids.
Gives them a connection to the team.
It's a connection. Absolutely. He's the guy that could have been, in school with me, or I could have been next door, or I could have been him. But he came through the same history as I did, not a guy from Buenos Aires. It does mean something.
Yeah. And he's an interesting one in that he was the one player that was specifically been targeted in the media and amongst anyone that was discussing the build-up to that tie. He was the weak link.
And how many times was Sané caught offside? It was unbelievable.
He seemed to rise to the fact that he was being talked about.
I thought that was great management from Klopp, because he had a difficult time the couple of games previously. Crystal Palace game was referenced obviously before the first Manchester City tie. Nathaniel Clyne was back in contention for that first game.
Played against Everton as well, didn't he?
Yeah, it would have been very easy in those kind of circumstances. A young player, inexperienced, hugely important game. I've got a decision to make. I've got an experienced international right back, could very easily bring in, take him out of foreign line, don't expose him to that. But he didn't. He gave him the jersey and he put him out there, showed a huge amount of confidence in the young player, and he got it back in bucket loads from him. He was outstanding in that first game, in particular Alexander-Arnold. And you were talking about development of the young players. In terms of the experience he's got over these last two games, he will have grown absolutely invaluable. So yeah, great decision from Klopp in terms of that particular decision to play him. And on the flip side, Guardiola's decision to leave Sterling out in that particular game. Different circumstances going into the cauldron. You could say maybe it's affected him before previously, Sterling going back there, but he's in great form. He's been a pivotal player for Manchester City, and how it affected, I think, really disrupted their rhythm, the fluency of their play, had a knock-on effect. Gundogan coming in, playing double narrow, and knocked De Bruyne a bit further down the pitch, almost playing in a deeper role. It really contributed to the downfall I felt in that first game, which ultimately where the tie was lost. I
want to get a quick word from you on Arsenal before we move on, but the other games you're looking at Roma 3, Barcelona 0, Real 1, Juve 3, Bayern even with Sevilla. That game could have changed on one or two pivotal moments as Sevilla had shown a little more attacking ambition. It's just been such an unbelievable week of these European games. So they're into the semi-finals. We're going to get the draw later this morning to see who Liverpool are going to be facing. Who do they most want to avoid? Is it an obvious answer, Real Madrid?
No,
or does it matter to Liverpool?
No, it doesn't. It doesn't matter. Their mindset at the moment, that football must be, let other teams worry about us. Particularly because the type of brand of football that they play, Liverpool, they stand alone from the other teams left in that competition. It's not a possession-based football that they play. They don't want to go toe-to-toe in terms of who plays the better football. We're better technically than you. That's the type of football team Real Madrid want to play. They probably would have preferred to play Manchester City, Real Madrid for those reasons. Type of Liverpool football they play, fast, direct, back to front, in behind.
It's more traditional Premier League type football in Europe that we saw around 2005 to 2010.
Yeah,
English teams dominating Europe.
Yeah, absolutely. Don't get me wrong, they go through midfield at times, Henderson and Milner, but they don't overcomplicate it. Like, they look to get the back to front. Salah, like I said before, doesn't come short and on the inside too often. Invariably he's looking to go in behind it. They don't disappoint. They hit a number of those balls in behind. They got willing runners, Sané, Mane, Salah, obviously, and even Firmino. And I know as a defender, you don't want to be doing that. You don't want to be constantly squeezing the halfway line and having to turn and run 20 yards that way. Particularly, you got players making good runs who are quick, dynamic, and powerful, and that'll disrupt any one of those teams.
And you're pinning the full-backs back as well, aren't you? Which just takes further from your opponent's attacking armoury. Yeah. So if you're looking at a Marcelo, for example, or a Carvajal when it comes to Real Madrid, they're not going to be as willing to find themselves very high.
Particularly Real Madrid. We're talking about weaknesses like Real Madrid down their left-hand side. That pairing of Marcelo and the captain, obviously.
Ramos.
Yeah, Ramos, that left side. It's always been the guy. Ramos, a great personality, don't get me wrong. Absolute leader, no doubt about that. Marcelo, wonderful footballer, more so left winger than left back. But that's the area of the pitch he can get through. Marcelo switches off. Ramos can be rash, hasn't got the juice in his legs that he did before. So you can see it already in terms of Salah operating off down that side of the pitch. Trent Alexander-Arnold getting himself involved. That's an obvious in for Liverpool.
Do you see them winning this?
Well, I had this conversation 3 months ago. Can Liverpool win? No, they can't. I had the conversation again a couple of weeks ago on Air Sport. Yeah, for the reasons that we're saying, this Liverpool team absolutely can win the competition.
I said it when they were. I said it ages ago they could win it because they've just so.
Before Van Dijk came to the football club.
I actually did because I said they've so much attacking.
I disagree with you there.
I said they've so much attacking talent they could fluke their way.
But defensively they were never solid enough. They could never soak up that amount of pressure. Like, they were too fragile, too open, too nervous in defence. You know what I mean? Conceding goals from set piece. It was never going to happen. I promise you, Johnny. Prior to the arrival of those players, the whole dynamics changed. Like, just the kind of the confidence around the football club, the form, they've just grown.
But you look at the other teams that are left now. Like, they're all like Real were really hobbling into the last four at this stage. You know, the other teams, Liverpool, are like they're eminently beatable. Roma and Bayern.
But this is what I'm saying. Liverpool are up there.
Possibly be favourites, and they're not.
I think at the moment they're there. For me, they're actually neck and neck with Real Madrid, with Bayern Munich slightly behind them and Roma behind them. I see them as literally as close as that. Them and Real Madrid, totally contrasting styles, fascinating. That's why I think in some way I'd love to see them get Real Madrid in the semi-final. Similar to Arsenal and Atletico, I'd love to see it. I think over 2 legs you find out. Yeah. You find out really who's the best over the 2-legged affair, and I'd love
Arsenal,
to see.
So you saw them last night.
Yeah.
They were in deep trouble. And CSK had a couple of opportunities to make it 3-0 in the night, which would have put them through in away goals. So you could say that they were on the rack and they were crumbling. The flip side of that is that when they needed to show some character, and this is certainly the line that Arsene Wenger has been peddling after the game, that they did exactly that and scored 2 really well-worked goals. The 1-2 between Welbeck and El Neni was absolutely sublime. Yeah. So which side of the argument do you come down in that regard, or somewhere in the middle maybe?
I give them a bit of credit, a bit of character to get themselves back into the game. Welbeck in particular, you know, I'm a big fan of his, and the fact is, the irony is, he probably wouldn't have played if McIntyre was fit last night. But he's got to find a place for this lad in terms of finding a happy balance in the team. But because he hasn't got it. With McIntyre on one side, Ozil, Xhaka, Ramsey and Wiltshire in the team, it's totally unbalanced at midfield. You got 5 midfielders who can't track a run and can't make a tackle. You can't win a major competition playing that type of football. So at least Welbeck coming in off that left hand side, not only his pace and his power, his ability to get a goal driving in from the left hand side, similar to Rashford in terms of his movement off that left hand side, predominantly a right footed player, explosive, coming in looking to play little combinations. So he was fantastic last night, Welbeck. And as well as that, he comes back, he does a shift, he gets back and does a defensive job for the team, which you don't get with the likes of McIntyre, and which you certainly don't get with Ozil. And Ozil was bordering on disgrace last night in terms of his attitude, out possession of football. It was an absolute disgrace.
Is that an indictment of Wenger though, like that he can get away with it? It
is that he can get away, because he feels as if he can get away with it. And there was a moment last night, Arsenal were 2-0 down, they were on the rack, the crowd was up, sensing this is it, really struggling. There was a ball cleared out, a desperate clearance from Neni outside the box up into the air. It dropped about 5-10 yards outside the box onto Ozil's head. Berezowski, the big centre half, you probably hear him steaming down behind him, looking to make contact, win the header. Ozil literally jumped out of the way of the football. Berezowski had a touch, took the ball and smashed it about 2 inches wide at the post. Now, I've played in dressing rooms, and a lot of players would have done. You've seen that on the pitch. That player would literally have been people queuing up to pin him to the wall when he got back in the dressing room. If the manager didn't get there before you. Now, I seriously don't think that happens in the Arsenal dressing room.
I don't think it's any question. It doesn't happen.
That type of attitude. Said it would happen in the Dublin dressing room. I know that. The characters they have. It's absolutely unacceptable, Dave. You can't get away with it. And Ozil, I know the flip side, wonderful technician of the football. And if you're going to play him in the team, you've really got to build a whole team around him. You got to play him as a 10. You got to get 2 banks or 4 behind to try and protect him, because he is all about himself. He just is not interested when he hasn't got possession of football, and every one of his teammates are working as hard as they can to get into a good defensive shape and do a stint for the team. He is not interested. He does not want to make a contribution, and that's not the type of player going forward that, for me anyway, you want to build a team around. So to cut a long story short, for me, if I was a manager of that football club, he wouldn't be at the football club. He'd have been out with a year's left on his contract, would have taken the money and got him out, and he's caused more problems by giving this massive deal in the summer, 350,000, and he's going to find out when Ramsey goes into renegotiate his contract. He's finding out already with Wiltshire in terms of when you raise the bar to that level and play that type of player who at times looks as if he's got the heart of a pea. 350,000 players. For me, that's a little bit of an indictment of actually where Arsenal are at this moment in time. The presence of that fella, as good as he is technically, in that football club.
That's why having a homegrown player as well, who's not on 350 grand a week and is not a prima donna, means a lot. You know what I mean? Like,
the question is Mesut Ozil going to be Arsene Wenger's problem next season or somebody else's? Is that something a new manager is going to have to deal with? Keep your thoughts coming in on Twitter, at Facebook as well. We'll get to a few of those in a moment, but have a listen to this, because on last night's Off the Ball, Nathan was in the presenter's chair. He was joined in studio, as he always is, by Richie on a Thursday night, and they're just in studio. We're in the middle of an ad break. The boys are getting ready to come back on air from ads, and then a rogue voice emerges over the airwaves.
Here, welcome back to Thursday's Off the Ball. Gareth A. Davies coming up between now and 9. We are also going to be talking to Andy Moran in just a moment. I don't know what that noise coming in the background.
We'd like to come and see you.
Kevin's having a singing. This is fantastic.
I say we talk over
Somebody
this very quickly.
pull his mic down
and quickly.
Kevin Kilbad. Singing. Oh no, he's still there.
He's still singing.
Still there.
No,
the find Kevin Kilbad and tell him to turn his microphone off. I'm just going to keep talking so that nobody can hear what he is saying. Not that Kevin Kilbad, the nicest man in Irish sport, would curse or would say anything negative about anybody.
I don't want to reach a second Naked Gun reference of the night, but I've ever seen that piece where Frank Drebin goes into the loo in front Naked Gun, and I was like, everybody can hear him.
I'm a little bit worried about where he is, because outside, what you can't see, obviously, even if you're watching online, everybody outside is in complete panic right now, searching for Kilban. Nobody knows where he is, so he could well be in the Jacks, singing away to himself. JP has just come back in.
Where was he?
Are we safe? Are we safe? He's turned off his microphone.
Thank God.
Well, thank God he's the one who had to learn that lesson and not me.
He's fulfilled a lifelong ambition to emulate Naked Gun, you know.
Oh my God.
Frank Drebin lives.
He can carry a tune, Kev, can't he? He can carry a tune.
No, there's a nice tone to his voice.
Yeah,
he's a nice bloke, though. I mean, if he were a kind of a hate-filled person, who knows what he would have been saying to himself.
He's not that nice.
Or what he might have been.
Not that nice.
What sort of activity he might have been engaged in. He could have been anywhere.
Jesus.
These mics are high quality. They will travel.
Oh, there.
But he's not that nice.
Johnny, come on.
No, overrated.
Nobody's that nice.
He just described
nobody's that nice. Exactly. Nobody's that nice. There's something hidden in the closet.
He described him as a showboater.
Always be suspicious of people who are described as that.
Always be suspicious of people who like everyone, you know, and he does.
Yeah.
A few comments coming in from our listeners and viewers. Dan Brady says Hunty looks like a retired actor who now owns a load of vineyards. It's a very nice way. I'll describe you, Stephen Hunty was in studio with Keith yesterday for the Keith Andrews Show. You can podcast that and get everything they were chatting about yesterday. Owen O'Neill says Mick could easily get West Brom back up. Parachute payments. He would have more than he ever had at Ipswich.
That parachute payments, I think, is a disgrace. It's a conversation for another day. I think it's an absolute disgrace what goes on there. The parachute payments those clubs get, I think it's all wrong.
For those who aren't aware of what the parachute payment system is, pretty much if you get relegated, you do still receive money from the Premier League.
Huge
incremental amounts or decreasing amounts in seasons 1, 2 and 3 afterwards. Huge sums in comparison to the rest of the clubs in the Championship and the financial power that they have.
Where's the fairness in that when these clubs have been earning huge amounts of sums of money already up in the Premiership? It's their responsibility to put money aside if they do make that drop down. That's what good being financially sound's all about, planning for a rainy day. Why should they receive those huge sums of money money when every other club in the Championship is scraping around looking at every single penny. It's totally unfair, that system. I can't believe it actually hasn't been challenged in the courts by a couple of clubs.
Mark Samuel says Karius is only looking well versus Mignolet, a backup at best, which is kind of backing on what you were saying. Get rid of Mignolet, get some cash for him, and bring in somebody like an Oblak if they could get their hands on him. Or you mentioned
Jack
from Stoke, who may well be a Championship player himself come the end of the season. Johnny, we were talking about Kevin and somehow managing to find himself with his mic on. God knows where he was, but Kenny reckons he carries a pretty nice tune. Do you know?
Soft, isn't he soft?
This man can sing as well.
Oh yeah, I've heard about this. Here we go.
Let's have a listen.
Lee Toddy take a trip to World Japan. We played every instrument I got. Like a lad, sure he beat the whole lot. Well, the old church bells will ring. Hell's bells, the old church choir will sing. Hell's fire, they all turned out to say farewell.
There you go.
It's an invasion of privacy. I told you, sticking that camera coming through the court.
You wouldn't have sung that in Iran, or you would have been 24 lashes or something like that.
Sing that anywhere with pride.
How'd you like Iran, actually?
Didn't see a lot of it. Didn't see a lot.
Remember they had wasn't Ramadan on at the time or something? They were in the stadium for hours beforehand. The fans.
Yeah, that's talked up an awful lot. Yeah. They were throwing there was explosive devices getting thrown on and big craters appearing in the on the pitch and stuff like that.
You were back on the north side.
Off Dorset Street, you're not wrong, to be fair.
We've got a full house this morning because we've got Johnny, we've got Kenny Cunningham, and now Anna Quinlan has joined us.
Morning, lads. How are you? Sounds like good fun in here this morning.
Physically and ego-wise, there really isn't
from here.
Not enough room in the studio for
I was going to say Alan sneaked in, but it's not physically possible for him to sneak into any room, is it?
He didn't do a bad job. In that 10-second clip of you singing on the plane home from Iran, Quinny had to get the chair, get himself seated, get himself squeezed in.
Quick mover.
Sleuth. It was very nice. It was very well done.
In the side of the ruck. Offside.
We're going to talk a little bit of rugby now because it's actually a very big weekend in the Pro 14. Ulster in particular have a massive game against Ospreys tonight. Alan Quinlan has joined us. David Wallace was on the show on Wednesday morning. Have a listen to what he had to say about playing in the back row with this fella.
But look, sometimes you see guys. I think with Quinny at times we used to play maybe a bit of left and right, and sometimes that works, sometimes it doesn't. Again, you can be a little bit out of kilter, but you often see guys changing in the back row, left and right. If there's a big left-hand side, open side off a scrum, it's a bit more challenging for a back row to cover that. He doesn't have the security of a number 9, so sometimes you see guys changing in that sense as well too. But look, more or less the positions, once you know the detail and you've run a few times of training, you kind of get to the swing of it. But at times in matches you can feel a little bit out of kilter. All right,
if you're playing left and right, was Quinny like, here, listen, that's too big for me, you can go off and do that? You've got that 40 yards to cover?
Well, let's just say he was very good over the longer distance and I was very good over the shorter distance, so we complemented each other. Okay. If I had to run the length of the field, sometimes I mightn't make it past 30-40 metres. So look, horses for courses, baby.
Horses for courses,
indeed. Were they compliments, Dave?
Well, you tuned out midway through, so you probably were.
And the compliments, begrudging compliments.
Then I was good, but I was annoying to play with at times.
To play with and to play against.
On and off the field.
He was some player Wally to play with, I tell you.
I'd say he was. He's a bit of a legend himself. Pro 14 rugby tonight. The sun on the backs of the Munster players have been in South Africa for a little while. They've already got one win, which is great for them. And it's a really big game against Cheetahs. It's at 6:35 this evening because if Cheetahs win, they can go above Munster in that conference. The potential being that if Munster finished third in that Pro 14 conference, they could end up having an extra game before a potential Champions Cup final, which is not what they would want because they would end up having to play that extra playoff match in the Pro 14. So as much as they would like to rest their key men ahead of the visit to Bordeaux to take on Racing 92 next weekend, this is a game they have to win.
Yeah, for sure. They don't have to win it. They can play Ulster and beat Ulster at home in the last game. Cheetahs are 6 points behind them in the league. So if they win with a bonus point tonight, Cheetahs against Munster, they go 1 point behind. They play the Kings next week, which I think they've been very, very powerful. So they could go ahead of them for sure. Munster finished third in that conference, then you're away in that quarter-final scenario. So they need one more win to guarantee that home quarter-final in Thomond Park, which is massive for them. Will they get it tonight? They've mixed and matched, changed the team a little bit. Conor Murray's on the bench, Peter O'Mahony's back. Stander played last week. There's no Keatley, he played last week. So the team that finishes tonight won't be the exact team that'll start. There's talks that Keith Earls might come back. And one question I've been asked all week is it a disruption for Munster being away for the 2 weeks and having to travel to France again next week? You could say that a little bit, but I think having the squad together for 2 weeks together away, it's effectively a mini kind of pre-season
training camp, bonding in the sunshine. I would have thought it's the perfect preparation for this huge game.
With respect to the Pro 14, I think the coaches will probably be working. They get their detail for last week against the Kings and this week against Cheetahs presented to the players. But they'll be working overtime, looking at Racing for next week in that big game in the quarterfinals. From a coaching
perspective, Alan, it's invaluable, those camps, bringing the players together and having them really 24/7 in terms of the work. Not so much on the training pitch,
doesn't it? Yeah,
but even off the training pitch in terms of work with the different units, individual players around the hotel.
Coaches will not be sleeping much there because you're thinking the game last week and this week they'll be focused. Obviously, you've got to not let on to the players that our minds are drifting forward, but the coaches will probably be doing a massive amount of work, watching the Racing games and the build up to that. I think the most important thing for Munster tonight is, even if they don't get the win, is they get out of there unscathed. They can't afford to get any more injuries. They're playing at altitude. They're going to be physically tested. The Cheetahs are very strong at home, and they want to get on that plane tomorrow, 12, 14, 15-hour journey home, whatever, with the stopover.
Alan, can you really do that in rugby? Look, we're talking to Johnny. Obviously, we haven't got a background in rugby, but when you talk about come out of a game unscathed, playing football, you could actually do that. You could make a conscious decision in terms of really throwing yourself into tackle, just staying away from things a little bit, playing almost within yourself, not putting yourself out there so much. When I look at the rugby, it's almost impossible for me, looking at it, to put yourself.
Do you know how you get injured, Kenny, in rugby?
Exactly.
He's been half-hearted.
Yeah.
So they've got to make sure that the players are fully focused on tonight, that they're 100%, because the South African teams are very physical, and this Cheetahs team have been strong at home. They have a few Springboks in the team that they've got back in the last couple of weeks. So they've got to go 100%, play hard, and just hope after the game.
Well, I'm sure you'll see the bench being emptied very early, no matter how the game is going.
Yeah, for sure.
You won't see Conor Murray, for example, competing anything
Marshall
close to 80
come on,
minutes.
Kilcoyne, Archer, O'Callaghan, the whole bench will be emptied. Keatley's on the bench, Scannell, Murray. Those three backs will start next week. How much game time does he bring him on for the last 15, 20 minutes? I don't think Conor Murray needs games.
Ideally, you don't see Murray at all tonight.
I would say maybe not, if possible. I think he's probably the most important player to Munster next week, going to Racing. We saw last year when he missed that semi-final against Saracens. But for me, get out of there unscathed, get the recovery done, get on the plane, get home. And luckily enough, the game is until Sunday week, so they can get back home on this Sunday, and they've 7 days before the game when they're back in Ireland. But it's important that, like we say, hopefully they get a little bit of luck as regards the injuries, and maybe benefited from Keith Earls maybe back next week, which would be massive for them.
You have Glasgow Connacht next in terms of what you want to talk about this morning. Now, I mean, Connacht, they're, it's a 1 in a million chance they're going to end up in Champions Cup rugby next season. They are up against a Glasgow team that need to win as well to make sure that they get that bye into the Pro 14 semi-finals. It's just been a disaster season all round. Same excuses week in, week out. Same old failings cost them a place in the semi-finals of the Challenge Cup. Connacht fans just want the season to be over, so they can consign it to history bank and get out of there.
And Kieran Keane coming in as coach, there was a lot of optimism, the changeover from Pat Lam. They played 19, lost 13. It's a really poor return. Slight chance of making the playoffs to qualify for Europe.
But they need to make up ground on Ospreys.
Ospreys, they're 6 points behind Ospreys.
1 win away from making sure that can't
They're
happen.
on 34 points. Ospreys are on 40. Even if they get maximum points, two bonus point wins, that will bring them to 44. They need Ospreys to lose tonight. But the problem is Ospreys play Zebra next week, and you think they'll get maximum points there.
So play Leinster as well in their last game, Connacht.
Yeah, and it's kind of a bit of a silver lining if you're with your goals, trying to get into Europe. Connacht have been there before. It's massive in the sports ground. Winning the Pro 14, the old Pro 12 a couple of years ago was huge. So they've gone backwards, and they've been really inconsistent this year. And it doesn't get any easier going to Glasgow tonight.
No, Ulster Ospreys it's a massive game for so many reasons. There's probably we've already referenced it a couple of times, there's probably going to be some protests and demonstrations of some sort outside the stadium on the way in, on the back of the Paddy Jackson and Stuart Olding rape trial, and all the discussion as to whether or not they should be reintroduced to the Ulster squad and by extension to the Ireland squad maybe at a later date. And we haven't got the review back from Ulster Rugby and the IRFU as yet, but that's going to run and run. There is still a rugby match to be played, and it's a game that Ulster absolutely have to win, because they have to haul Edinburgh back in. And while they do have a game in hand, they probably need to be foot perfect between now and the end of the season, Ulster, and not playing Champions Cup rugby next season would be a disaster for a club whose attendance is down about 3,000 on average per game this season. You would imagine that will only be dented further on the back of what's happened off the pitch in recent months, and a Challenge Cup season, which, in all due respect to that competition, nobody wants to be involved in.
It's been a disastrous season for Ulster, on and off the field. You don't want to be getting into too many permutations and confusing people, but they lie fourth in Conference B. They're 8 points behind Edinburgh. That win last week was massive. It gave them a chance of maybe making the playoffs. They have a game in hand, so that game tonight, I think they need to get maximum points and bring themselves to 56. Then they're 3 behind Edinburgh, and you know they hope that maybe Edinburgh lose a game or two, and it's doable. But it's been really, really poor. You think Les Kiss leaving, then John O'Gibbs is going at the end of the season, and they haven't been, 2014 since they've been in the knockout stages of Europe. There's a lot of promises and big statements, particularly in 2010 from their CEO Shane Logan, saying that their goal was to be one of the top clubs in Europe.
Top of the pile in Ireland,
and Dave, I've played so many times up in the old Ravenhill and the Kingspan, and the Ulster people are unbelievably passionate, and there's a demand and maybe a similar expectation when Munster weren't making the knockout stages in the last couple of years. They've great fans, and there's a feeling that they've been perennial underachievers. I think it's a fact. They haven't won a trophy since 2006, and in that time you think Ospreys have won the Pro 14, Pro 12, 4 times, 3 or 4 times. Glasgow, Connacht, Scarlets. And you think, why haven't Ulster done that in 12 years?
But has the squad been good enough? And that's always an easy thing to say, isn't it?
They've made a lot of mistakes with the recruitment. There's something not right, the feel-good factor in the group. And team spirit, the bond, is something not right.
That's a management responsibility, really, in terms of
they've got it.
The problems are deep-rooted, really,
off the field. They've got it wrong.
Go back to 2012, Kenny. They get to a European Cup final in brilliant style. They got down to Munster, win a quarter final. They win at the Aviva Stadium against Edinburgh in the semi-final, and they sack the coach. Brian McLaughlin loses his job at the end of that season.
And he's a homegrown guy. They've lost their identity a little bit, and it's all kind of unravelled there, and it's not right, and they've got to fix this. But I think first and foremost, in the short term, they've got to win these last couple of matches,
playing Champions Cup rugby,
and at least then get into the playoffs in Europe. Make sure you're in Europe next year as well. You're qualified for next year's, but get into the playoffs in the Pro 14. And you never know. Like Ulster, they'd be tricky in the knockout stages.
They'd still be the plum draw right now.
Yeah, but they'd be tricky. They would, but they'd be tricky, and they're capable.
Before you go, quick word on Leinster. Leinster need a couple of wins just to make sure that they top their conference, and they have a bye week heading into the semi-finals. They need to mind themselves as well with the Scarlets en route on Saturday. That game's live and exclusive next weekend at the Aviva Stadium, and off the ball, Leinster Scarlets in the Champions Cup semi-final. Tomorrow evening, 7:35, you expect them to win, lock down that top spot in the next week or two. Everything. They could have everything they ever dreamt of between now and the end of the season, or they could end up with nothing.
Yeah, well, a bonus point win will almost secure them that home spot in the semi-final. One less game. It's been all good news for them, really. I know they've had a few injuries, losing Van der Fleer and Henshaw. There's talks he may be back. It could be a miraculous recovery.
O'Brien back tomorrow night.
O'Brien back is massive, because I think everyone has felt his pain. He's had so many bloody injuries this year again, disappointments. The comeback a few weeks ago against Scarlets, he gets the stinger in the shoulder. So look, hopefully he can get back on track. He's clear to play tomorrow night. Luke McGrath may be available for that Scarlets match next week, which would be massive for him as well. So you'd imagine Leinster will be way too powerful, and is there an A team, a B team there? You know,
C team.
A C team. We could start looking at a C team. There's so many players there. Kenny Cunningham might even get a run with Leinster at this stage.
Tricky winger.
Tricky winger.
On the wing. Keep me on the wing.
Look, powerful, and it's been all positive. You know, and they're in good shape going into next week.
Certainly are. Quinny, thanks a million as always. Really interesting Pro 14 weekend ahead, and then of course we're into the Champions Cup semi-finals. Munster and Leinster both in action. We haven't really mentioned GAA, but we are going to just give it a little bit of a mention now. Coming up in a moment, we're going to talk Grand National with Johnny, and John Duggan of OffTheBall.com is coming in as well. But the Mayo star, former captain and reigning footballer of the year, Andy Moran, was on last night's Off the Ball. He was chatting to a fellow Mayo man in Nathan Murphy. Here's what he had to say about the first year of the Super 8s.
Are you in favour of the Super 8s? Is it something, if you get there, you'd really look forward to? Like, there is the possibility of Dublin, Castlebar, a Saturday night.
Yeah. And like honestly, we were like, the atmosphere in Ballybuffet is class now, just for instance, right? So that game was really good game to be part of. Okay, 2 teams, a lot of riding on it. Joe, nearly a full house. And we did say coming out of it, a lot of us saying, Joe, it'd be really cool to play the Super 8s in different venues. And you remember Limerick in 2014, like what atmosphere that was down playing Kerry in Limerick. Like it was amazing, really, to be honest, because you wouldn't experience that usually, you know. And am I in favour of the Super 8s? In a lot of ways I am, and I would like to hold off kind of my opinion on it till it's over, but to be honest, I'm delighted I'm still playing while it's on. I'd hate to have been retired and for it to happen then and not to experience it. So really looking forward to it, to be honest, but the key is to be in it.
Yeah, as you say, you are 34 now, you'll be 35 next November. Like, are you at that stage when you're going to Ballybuffet, you are looking around, you are making sure you take everything in? Or are you at a stage where you're the current footballer of the year, you're at the peak of your powers?
Yeah, well, I would, like the way I've looked at it since probably 2014. I was captain in 2014, couldn't really get fit at all for the year. So when I came back in 15, I thought it was a bonus here. All that was being asked of me was, we just need you fit come the championship. And I got fit and I really enjoyed it. I genuinely I don't think I've enjoyed a year as much as 2015. And then, Joe, the career started cranking off then again, and we started moving. And my philosophy on it now was, listen, when you go to Ballybuffet, it could be your last time playing Ballybuffet, because now Donegal are relegated. When we play the next time, we'll be probably in Castlebar. Like, I'll be 35, 36 at that stage. So every game now I go into and I go, listen, let's enjoy this, let's have a bit of fun here. And it seems to be working for me.
Yeah, Andy Moore in conversation with Nathan Murphy last night. You can get that on OffTheBall.com and podcast it in full. Time to talk Aintree Grand National weekend. It is tomorrow at Aintree. John Duggan of OffTheBall.com has joined us. John, thanks a million.
Dave, good morning, and Johnny and Kenny.
Yeah, full house this morning.
Happy Grand National weekend.
God, you know he got up a bit later than we did. You're full of the joy.
Well, it's actually just acting. Be miserable when I go into the office.
There are going to be an awful lot of people who really only have a flutter on a horse on Gold Cup Day and Grand National Day, dusting off the betting slips this weekend. There are, as we speak, probably people running around the offices up and down the country with their sweepstake pages in hand, trying to get the scissors out and cut it all up and get everybody involved, which is what you do on Grand National weekend. This is obviously a bigger deal to like yourself and Johnny than it would be, say, for myself and Kenny. But my biggest memory of the Grand National, unfortunately, is the race that never was.
93.
Yeah,
the void race.
The false starts, the void race.
HNS?
Well, I was only 13, so I wasn't. I don't think I'd backed a horse myself. When you think Grand National, what's the first thing that springs to mind for you?
I think it's West Tip in 1986.
We are going back a while.
I had a fiver on and went to school on Monday and told everybody that I backed it and was honest about it. And then when I was in college, in first year in college, I really fancied Lower Glen in 1997. That was the year of the bomb scare. They ran it on the Monday and it won by half the track. And that actually really got me hooked into horse racing, that race. And in recent years, luckily enough, I had this brainwave to tip Aurora's Encore at 80-1. Did my money on the Friday. I said, I'm not going to bother backing it. I tipped it, and then it won at 80-1, and it was 100-1 in the morning. So it was great, because all these people on Twitter were going that they loved me and, you know, they wanted to buy me drinks and all this, and they paid for their property tax, but I didn't have any money on it myself.
At least they paid for their property tax.
Yes, well, that's it. So,
the government
Johnny, I'm sure you got great memories of it.
Yeah, like, funnily enough, it's not a race that excites me as much at all as others. I'd be more intrigued by the good flat races, and the Cheltenham, to me, Aintree's not a meeting that really does it for me. You see, there's a complete lack of Irish runners this week because basically Gordon Elliott and Willie Mullins are in this brawl to win the title over here, and they pretty much had more runners in the Ryanair Gold Cup than the entire Aintree meeting, or thereabouts anyway. They had 9 between them, and that was.
So why is that? You put that down to the fist fight over here for the trainer's title?
Yeah, they basically want to win the title, and Willie kind of.
Can they not juggle both as they would have done at Cheltenham?
They can, but if they've it's very, very hard for horses who run at Cheltenham to run at Aintree and Punchestown. It's asking a hell of a lot. It'd be like playing 3 soccer matches in 3 consecutive
so it's a
nights.
resources issue.
It's resource, yeah. And this meeting is kind of, because Irish racing is so strong now, this meeting is kind of falling in between. I mean, some of the novice races this week, Grade 1 races, are pretty poor. But the National itself has obviously a massive Irish interest. And I suppose my memory would be Bobby Joe winning it, because Bobby Joe was owned like literally down the road from me, and it was Bobby Burke, whose brother ran the pub that I used to drink in when I was
12.
When I was just about legally able. I was telling my mother I was going down to play a few games of pool, and she bought it for about 6 months.
Well, I'm looking at John's notes here, peering over your shoulder. That's 19 years ago this week that Bobby Joe won the National.
Yeah.
And I'm trying to figure out what age you are, but I'm pretty
I was
sure
17.
you were not
15,
legally
16,
able.
17. But anyway, he was owned locally in Mount Bellew, and because I'm from a racing backwater, that was actually a big deal. And we have in our county presenting Percy as a Gold Cup candidate next year,
There
which
you go.
is a big deal. But
So look, what are we looking at? So
I've never backed the winner of the race, just so all these people who think I can tip horses.
He's useless. Why'd you invite him to the show this morning? Yeah. You ain't going to tip a winner, John. Do you know
to the uninitiated amongst us,
be broken,
the method for choosing a horse for the National, John, for a lot of us will be pin the race card on the wall, pick a dart up and just fire it at the wall and just back whichever horse you manage to land it on. If you like the colours of the horse, if you like the jockey's name, for example, if you like the horse's name. Is that the case? Is it a lottery? Can any of the 40 in the field tomorrow win this race, or is it a little more nuanced than that?
It's a bit more nuanced, Dave, and everybody. The first ever winner of the race in 1839 was called Lottery. So that's an interesting stat. But I always find that the Grand National is about a few things. It's about being able to jump, the unique fences at Aintree. Now, the fences are not as forgiving as they were back in, say, the 70s. If you remember watching Red Rum and Crisp and that on the YouTube. But you need to stay. It's 4 miles, 2 furlongs. It's the longest race that they have. You need to be able to stay. The stamina is important. You need to be able to jump well, and you need to be able to have sometimes a little bit of class. You know, the better horses that can be able to go up with the pace, but also show stamina, are the ones that can win. Weight generally in recent years, because it's changed a little bit, that the class horses have generally performed better in recent years. But for a long period of time, horses under 11 stone were generally the ones that were favoured. And I think that the softer the ground, and the ground is a little bit soft this week, will bring lower weighted horses into it. So, for example, I've gone through the 40 horses. I probably narrowed it down to about 10, and then I'll try and.
It's almost like trying to pick a winner of the Masters. You can get rid of the past champions who are over the hill, get rid of the rookies.
Yes,
and
it's not that hard to pick a winner. It's not that hard to pick a winner.
We know you back
Masters,
Patrick Reed. Look, he backed Patrick Reed. Let's get that.
That's what I'm saying.
Yeah.
Well, look, we'd expect that from you, though. Kenny's a bit of an outlier when it comes to this. So you're looking at the 40, and for various reasons,
yes.
The process of elimination, you've cut it down.
I've got it down to about 10.
Okay.
Generally, if I find, lads, if I've got 3 or 4, if I can't see it, sometimes I don't have the winner. I think I've had the winner 5 times in 21 of the races. So
that's good going.
If I can see it, it's then I kind of feel like I'm nearly there. But if I can't see it clearly, it means I might not see it.
Okay. So
is there a grey, John? What's the best place grey in the horse in the race?
Well, there's this really good story.
Always back to grey.
Baldezil. It's Katie Walsh, and a lady rider who's never won the race. It's her husband trains it, Ross O'Sullivan. Huge money for it all week. It's 7-year-old grey Baldezil, 16 to 1.
I'm on it.
So. Yeah, that's definitely a horse that will love the ground, will stay. But it's a 7-year-old. And once again, if you know your stats, a 7-year-old has not won the race, Kenny, since 1940.
Any reason why shouldn't a 7-year-old?
Just stamina. Stamina. Yeah, and like older horses are better be able to stay the 4 miles and 2 furlongs.
Too young.
It's a war of attrition, yeah.
Okay, so Johnny, You're looking at the top of the betting CR, so you're really going out on a limb.
He's never backed the what are you asking him for? He's never backed the winner. It's a waste of time. Go back to John.
Let me give my manifesto.
Total recall. Go for it. Sell it.
I've looked at the 40 runners. I've narrowed it down to 44.
38.
There are 4 reserves. Right. Annabelle Fly was third in the Gold Cup. On that run, he's very well in. He's a bit short in the betting for me because I think Total Recall might well have beaten him. He fell in the Gold Cup. This has been his plan. He was taken from Sandra Hughes to Desi Hughes, to Willie Mullins after Desi Hughes passed. Sandra took over the horse. Willie has seen this massive improvement from him. Jumps very well. He would have been Ruby Walsh's ride. Ruby's injured, so Paul Townend will ride him. He's around 10, 12 to 1, but he's a huge chance, I think. See You at Midnight has been bought by New Connections. Maybe a horse you'd back for the name alone.
Great.
See you at midnight.
Is it great? Is it a great?
No, it's not.
Forget it. Not interested.
There he is there. Not grey.
No, he's not. No.
So See You at Midnight. He's a classy horse actually, who since his novice days hasn't done much racing. Could be very well handicapped. Last year's race, we had a massive run from horses going to be fancied again. Blackline. Just not sure if he got home. Just not sure if he actually does get this trip. And as John was saying, it's a very hard race to actually tick all the boxes, because you have to be prominent most of the time, you have to jump, and you have to keep going. It's almost like running a marathon at a 15-mile race pace, and consistently just keep going for over 26 miles. So it's asking a lot. A few others I give a mention to. Gavin Cromwell as a trainer that have put plenty of faith in myself, and he has Razda Marie. I rang him last night, and he was having a McDonald's. So I said, and if...
As the horse wasn't.
No, he wasn't. But he was having a McDonald's.
Happy meal.
He was on the way to Holyhead with the horse, and he said if ever he is going to win this race, it's this year, because he never would get his ground apart from this year. It's a soft ground national, which is quite unusual. And Razda Marie won the Welsh national. He's 13 years of age, which bizarrely gives you a better chance than if you were 7, effectively.
Oh, way.
It does. The veterans go fine in this race. Remember?
So that Razda Marie, we're looking at 33s, John.
Yeah, he has a chance. He's actually, funnily enough, he's not the biggest horse in the world for these fences, but he jumps great. He's a really likeable horse. So I give him a bit of a squeak, but I do like Total Recall. I think he ticks plenty of boxes, and his trainer has won the race before, unlike the Gold Cup and the Irish National, which he hasn't won.
John?
Well, of the 8 that shortlisted, all of Johnny's are in that 8.
Okay.
Wow. We're thinking great minds, Johnny.
Happy days.
See, Kenny, these dudes know
talk is cheap. We'll say.
And Kenny's in this picture with the grey as well.
It's Baldezil. See You at Midnight is the one among them. I'm going to write a preview on offtheball.com probably tomorrow morning. But at the moment, See You at Midnight is the one I like at 16 to 1. He will go on any ground. He beat Bristol Demai, and he beat Blackline earlier in his career. He's had a few injury problems. He's 10 years of age now. He was 3rd in the Scottish National, and maybe a bit too much use was made of him in that race. Brian Hughes takes the ride tomorrow, and I think that he is a prominent racer. He's a sound enough jumper, and I think he's definitely capable of 10 stone 11 of reaching the frame. See You at Midnight. Right now, he would be my pick. A few that I would put into the mix as well. Annabelle Fly would completely agree with. He's got very well weighted on that run in the Gold Cup. We saw Might Bite run very well yesterday and win. Minella Rocco I've always really liked. I think he stays
top weight.
Top weight, which would be very difficult. I don't think it's been done since 1977. Would probably prefer better ground. Will say the trip though has got a bit of class. Has beaten Native River twice. Beat him in the 4-miler, beat him in the Gold Cup last year. Native River is the current Gold Cup champion. So Minella Rocco is a horse I cannot discount. Blackline I think has got too much weight. Total Recall it has to be part of the calculations. Razda Marie was also my list. I'm speaking to Robbie Power this morning. I'll get a bit more sense of his chances. And he's actually, I think, improved with age and for moving yard to Gavin Cromwell's Razda Marie. Will stay all day if he can jump around. A couple of horses that are completely out of form, but are class acts on their day at massive prices. Carlingford Lock is 50 to 1, has won 2 Irish Gold Cups, one at Leopardstown, one at Punchestown, off 11 stone now, 12-year-old. And Volster Lido, who Henry de Bromhead says is working well, seems to have completely lost the plot, but at 80 to 1, this is a Grade 1 winner, Volster Lido and Carlingford Lock. You'd have to take your chances that they'd be coming back to form. That's why you couldn't really be backing with any confidence.
But if they got into rhythm, and Carlingford Lock is trained by John Kiley in Waterford, John Kiley, up until recently, and could still be doing this, was riding out this horse every morning, 79 years of age.
Oh my God.
He's riding one of the biggest horses you're going to get in racing, riding him out every day. An absolute legend of the game. Himself and his brother Paddy riding out against each other. There's a great photo of the two of them in their late 70s riding up the gallops. And if he were to win, there wouldn't be a more popular winner. He's a true legend of the game, and age is but a number.
And he had a winner yesterday in the last race.
I don't know why I looked at you when I said that.
Fair point.
John, I want to get a tip for today from you in a moment. But Kenny, last word on the national. You have the two boys here. You will not be surrounded by any more expertise between now and the off tomorrow. So is there? And one more question.
John's giving me horse. He's giving me horse. He's giving it to me, John.
He's giving the
Balazale.
You're pinning your colours firmly to the grey mask.
Absolutely, yeah. Always my dad always remember my dad saying growing up, let's back to grey. So
you're a big desert.
And you're even wearing grey.
Well, it's funny enough, I never used to watch this just on a sidebar, like playing football Saturday. For a long period of time, I never saw the National live for that 4 o'clock. I remember coming off a half-time, 4:45, lads coming down the tunnel, everybody poking their heads into the players' lounge, maybe just to get the start of the race, just in that small period in between going into the dressing room and coming back out again. But for a long period of time, just never got the opportunity to actually see the National.
So you'll watch it tomorrow?
I will watch it tomorrow, yeah. Game on. Man City, 5 o'clock. Rolls into the Man City game. Tottenham straight after. Off the back of the Masters. The derbies last weekend. Oh my! Did I tell you won the Masters, John? Did I mention that? All right.
Have you spent the Reed money, or are you going to invest it in the grey?
You back Reed, did you? Didn't know that.
Don't leave it now.
At least somebody is happy he won.
It was a great bet. It was a great bet. A 50-1 bet doesn't come around very often, Kenny. So just indulge.
I'm glad you're pleased for me. Not too many people are around this table.
Indulge.
Thank you.
Have some ice cream. I'm sick of Snow Falcon turning up and not winning races. I don't know what you think, Johnny.
So today's the day.
Today, hopefully, is the day. These English novices are not great.
They're no good.
What time is it?
The 250 Snow Falcon at 8-1 was third behind Yanworth and Super Sunday last year. Is running in a 3-mile race chase today, and I think he's got a good chance. Novices chase was unlucky in the Irish Grand National. Will go on the ground. No Mead is in good form in the last couple of weeks. Snow Falcon at 8-1 has to be backed each way, but I'll see you at midnight, folks, for the Grand National.
Wow,
there you go. You heard it here first, Johnny and John. Thanks a million, boys. Dave. We hope you're right. We're going to talk with Darren Cleary in a moment, because St. Pat's, as we've been discussing already with Kenny and Johnny, this week they have unveiled what you could describe as the most ambitious stadium plan we've ever seen from a League of Ireland club this week. They're putting a proposal forward to Dublin City Council where they want to build a new 12,000-seater UEFA Category 3 stadium on top of a shopping centre. Interestingly, they're doing this without financial backing from the government or the FAI. So the big question is, how are St. Pat's going to pay for this? Well, that is exactly the question that was put to the president of the club, Tom O'Mahony, by Off the Ball's Darren Cleary yesterday.
The City Council owns the site, but they want to do a partnership with a developer. So we are saying we can be that developer. Now, the nature of that deal would then have to be worked out. You know, it would probably be something along the lines that the City Council would give us the site, we would do the thing and give them back all the civic facilities, and then, you know, whatever value needed to change hands, and that would all be part of the negotiating process.
So who would actually own the Richmond Arena should it be constructed?
It would be Garrett Kelleher and his company.
Garrett Kelleher would own it?
Yeah.
Who funds this to build it? Will it be Mr. Kelleher will be the one funding this?
For something like this, you put together a funding package of international investors, and that's the business that Garrett is in. That's what he does. And the beauty about this is that everything is already in place. Garrett knows exactly who would be the design and architectural team. He knows and has named the company who would be responsible for the actual development itself, the project management and so on. And he has his international investors lined up who will come in on this if we get the go-ahead, because it is the retail part of it actually makes it a very, very attractive package for investors. They know that they're going to get the return on their investment. But the retail part of it then in turn funds the stadium. That enables the stadium to happen.
So the answer to who funds it is Gareth and investors?
Investors.
To be determined.
Yeah.
How much will it cost?
That I can't say that for two reasons. First of all, we have no idea what housing specification Dublin City Council will set out, and obviously that has a huge implication for that helps to determine the cost of the thing.
Is there an over, is there an under, is there some...
No, we've no idea. But the second thing is, we may never tell people what this is going to cost. And part of the reason for that is we're not looking for any government grants for it. This is unlike practically any other stadium development that there has ever been in the country. This will be privately financed. So costs and everything like that become a matter between Garrett and the financial companies and so on that are going to invest in it. So there would be issues around commercial sensitivity and all of that. So if it may well be the case that we won't put a price on it.
Can you understand maybe the concerns of fans if they don't know who's properly behind the project and they don't know how much the project will cost?
But they do know who's behind the project. It's
Garrett and unnamed investors. It probably doesn't give an idea of who's really behind it.
But who, for any investment that takes place anywhere, do people need to know the names of the banks that are investing money in it? Do people need to know the names of the investors? Absolutely not.
There's probably social capital in something like a football club in a different way.
Well, we're talking about an international commercial transaction here. I would say the names of the investors would mean nothing to football fans. I think what I would say to people here is look at what Garrett Kelleher has done in the 12 years that he has come into St. Pat's. Through thick and thin, he has supported the club. He has made sure that the club survived the hard times that we had. He's put his money where his mouth is, and he is going to continue to do that.
Would you say the League of Ireland in general has had positive experiences with unnamed investors and single investors pumping money into clubs in general?
I'm never going to speak for any other clubs. I can only speak for St. Patrick's Athletic, and our experience with our investor, who of course is not unnamed because we've named him about 10 times in this interview, is extremely positive.
Maybe just the general perception though is that it's probably right to have some degree of caution to a project like this, given that the League of Ireland has some history of these projects never coming to fruition and angel investors that appear and don't really fulfill the promises. You would probably imagine a certain degree of people being a little bit nervous from that sense.
Well, we're talking about somebody who has invested in this club 12 years ago and has continued to invest in the club when quite clearly he's not making, a massive return out of it, quite the reverse.
Is this the opportunity to make a return? Is that part of his motivation?
His motivation, as far as I can see, and I mean, I'm putting my reputation on the line here. I wouldn't be involved in this project if I didn't have complete trust and confidence in Garrett. Garrett's motivation here is because he has been involved in this club for 12 years. He sees the opportunities for this club and for Inchicore in the development that he proposes, and this is what he does. He is a developer, and he sees the opportunity to bring his skills and his experience to the benefit of the club and the area, and he's going to do that.
So that's Tom O'Mahony, President of St. Patrick's Athletic Football Club, in conversation with our very own OffTheBall.com's Darren Cleary at Richmond Park yesterday. Darren has joined us in studio this morning. Thanks for coming in.
Morning, Dave.
The first thing we should say is that there's an awful lot of road to go down before we get even remotely close to turning the sod first off for the building of this stadium. We'd no guarantee the club is going to get this land from Dublin City Council. No active bids for the land are in place, according to the council, at the moment at least. Of course, there's the possibility that DCC might see it better just to sell the land themselves to a private developer, and there's no connection to a football stadium at all. So Pat's talking about potentially having a game in this Richmond Arena by 2022. It does seem a little bit far-fetched in terms of the timescale. There's so much to get through.
Ambitious may be the kinder word than far-fetched. It's an incredible proposal. It looks very cool, and you have to see that the benefit of what they're trying to propose is it's not just regenerating their stadium and giving themselves a place to play football. I think they're looking at their proposal and they see it as one that benefits not just St. Patrick's Athletic Football Club, but the general area of Inchicore. They're putting in civic amenities. They want to put in a library, they want to put in a theatre, maybe a pool hall, stuff like that. So they see this as a little bit more than just a football stadium project. They're looking from the outside and they feel their proposal is pretty all-encompassing of making that area, that Richmond Arena, the heart of the community. That is what they are going for. They want to make it a one-stop shop, not just for their football club to have somewhere to play football, but retail. They'll have housing there, they believe, and civic amenities too.
So they're trying to do this without any financial backing from the government or the FAI, which I guess leaves the President in a position where he doesn't necessarily have to tell us how much it's going to cost. But there have been issues in the past with League of Ireland clubs where there have been investors coming from outside of the game. It has not ended well. There has been a shady enough element to it And the question as to who is actually going to be investing this money, I think is going to be one that's very relevant and something that the FAI, that the government, that maybe St Patrick's Athletic fans, League of Ireland fans in general are going to want to know the answers to.
Yeah, and in fairness, they have quoted commercial sensitivities as one of the reasons why they really kind of batted away those questions. And you can understand why, if there's going to be a massive tendering process by international companies to try and get a hold of the land, why they wouldn't be too keen to show too many of their cards. But I think with something like a football club, there's social capital involved. These people in the area, it will be part of where they live, where they fraternise, where they will raise their family and their children. So I'm sure they do have some interest in who is actually going to be behind this project and what benefit it has for not just their area but for this person. I mean, no one's coming in here as a charity to build these fantastic amenities for the good of their health.
Yeah, Garrett Kelleher is in the business of making money. He is a developer. There's no question that he has played an awful lot of finances into St Patrick's Athletic since he took over 5 years ago, and were it not for him, the club probably wouldn't exist today. But he's hoping that both this council land, the DCC land as it currently exists, and Richmond Park will be developed, all of it owned by the club and by extension Garrett Kelleher. So clearly there is money to be made here.
Absolutely. I mean, you got to imagine that a large part of the motivation is financial, and I don't think Tom tries to shy away from that in the interview. He mentions that is Garrett's business. He's in the business of developing land, and it won't just be this St Michael's estate. We touch on in the longer interview, which is on the Off the Ball YouTube, what happens to Richmond Park, and he says, well, we rezone that and that can be used for housing development too. There are other bids, we understand, at least if they haven't been tabled yet, they're in the process of being prepared. At least two others which focus on 420 housing units for that area where they plan to build a stadium, with at least one of them has a 50% ratio of affordable housing for that 420, and the other is just 420 straight housing units to be sold in whatever manner they need to be sold.
Yeah, so those who maybe aren't fans of football or the League of Ireland, their argument would be, we can't afford this sizable land mass within the Dublin inner city area to be given to a football stadium.
Well, the question is...
So that's obviously, there's a planning process that has to go through, and all of this will come out over the course of that process.
Well, what's more important to the area, I think you'd have to ask people in the area, but is it retail units, is it a library and a football stadium of 12,000 people, 12,000 seats, or is it affordable housing in the midst of a housing crisis? It's difficult to see. I mean, there is a lot of positivity because you have to admire their ambition and the fact that they are trying to invest money in infrastructures to safeguard the future of the club, because at the moment Richmond Park, the facilities are antiquated, they can't do a whole lot with them. If they are to move forward as a club, they'll probably need to look outside Richmond Park because they can't develop that area. This is a really good deal for St Pat's. It would be a really good deal for Gareth Kelleher. Whether or not it's a good deal for Dublin City Council and the people of Inchicore, it probably remains to be seen.
The League of Ireland, Johnny, needs investment. It definitely needs ambition. It needs vision. And I don't think any of us are in a position to turn around and start, pointing fingers to St Patrick's Athletic for what they've come up with this week, or immediately trying to pick holes in it, because they want a stadium where mothers and fathers will be happy to bring their boys and girls to play. I wouldn't worry, a lot of League of Ireland grounds I wouldn't want to be bringing my young fellas to on a Friday evening in February or March.
It's a nail on the head though, isn't it?
And it is a great idea, and maybe more clubs need to be looking at being as ambitious as possible.
Definitely. I mean, you need to think of 20 years down the line, not now. What will stadia look like? What will people who've come through a generation of being brought up by smartphones, how will they even think? You got to think that way, not like what's our need at the moment. But like, I used to live in Inchicore, it badly needs something like this. And Darren's piece, and this is the whole thing, you need both sides of the story. Darren's piece touched on stuff that I wasn't necessarily aware of. What will happen to Richmond Park? I mean, that'll basically be owned by Kelleher, and it'll be developed presumably to make money. That's interesting. Now, from speaking to Pats fans, are overwhelmingly in favour of this. Overwhelmingly, and League of Ireland fans are overwhelmingly in favour. I think 12,000 is actually, it's a sensible figure, because in my view, the League of Ireland is a growth industry. I think it's going to become a lot bigger, because I think people will eventually get a little bit fed up with following English teams and will like following what is actually a good product and a product that's improving. And 12,000 people for me is not overly ambitious for a catchment area. Like, they've almost the entire southwest of Dublin there for a potential catchment area. Pats have lost a lot of their community identity, I think. I was speaking about this during the week. Inchicore has been in flux. You know, it's had a lot of non-nationals coming in. A lot of people from the country have come in because it was affordable when other places in Dublin weren't. When I moved to Inchicore, I suppose 10, 12 years ago, left it since, but it's a strange part of Dublin at the moment. It needs regeneration. It basically, I think there's barely an ATM machine in Inchicore. You know, you have to go into the Spar. So it lacks an awful lot of stuff. The Pats ground is completely antiquated, and the Pats ground functions for 2 hours in the week. That's it. Does nothing else. So this stadium has this idea of it's open every day. It's obviously available for a lot more than just when Pats are playing. The only thing about Kelleher is, Kelleher does seem to be a pretty noble developer, if such a thing exists. He seems to be, you know, he's put a lot of money into Pats.
He's lost an awful lot of money.
He's
debts of 5 million. He's
burned money, Darren.
He's been there 12 years. He could have pulled the plug long ago. He's been patient with the manager, Liam Buckley, even when they were struggling with relegation last year.
Absolutely.
He's always given them space, always given them time to work.
That should give everybody a bit of confidence, you would imagine, though, Darren, in terms of going forward with this particular project. It seems to me there's a lot of trust. At some stage, people are going to have to put a bit of trust with Gareth Kelleher
they have
in terms
to
of
trust
ambitions.
him. See what's happening in Bray, right? So Bray's fans have basically abandoned the club because I do feel that they've no time whatsoever for the people who run the club, and they're deeply sceptical of their ambitions in terms of the Carlisle grounds. I don't get the sense that that's the case here, and that's the key thing. And the other thing is, if you want to move a ground, like, you know, I've been to Coventry Stadium now, they're playing in Wasps ground in wherever it is. Coventry has basically, like, they're so regretful that they left the Highfield Road, and you can see this in so many clubs. Pats are literally moving across the road. They're not moving out to somewhere that's like 2 miles away that has no identity. That's a huge thing as well. And St Michael's desperately needs regeneration.
And you talk about identity. That's exactly what it'll give that part of Dublin. You've more experience living there than I have. It actually really gives that part of Dublin a real kind of identity, almost something that you can be proud of. A football club of that stature in your area, you know, you're almost drawn to that. You mentioned kind of social and the civic buildings there as well. Even a library mightn't seem a big thing, but I think it is. I think that kind of matters. Pool, whatever it is, a theatre, things like that.
Hub, isn't it?
Yeah, it is a hub. It actually is a hub. It's almost like looking at some landmark that's where we're going to, because Inchicore
pulls people together.
It doesn't have that.
Yeah, pulls people together. People that would maybe socialise normal in the day-to-day kind of environment. Suddenly they're down the library, they're in the pool, they're in the cafe, you're meeting people. You know what I mean? And over a period of time, that kind of thing pulls people together. Like, I understand the housing point of view. Affordable housing for me is key. Not so much what housing is going to be available, but kind of affordable housing, realistically what people can afford. Like, you know, so if there's obviously making allowances for that as well. I think at some point you're going to have to take a jump with this, you know what I mean, in terms of putting your trust in the people involved to go and put this thing together. But from a neutral point of view, looking at it, I say neutral, obviously I'm invested a little bit in the League of Ireland, obviously we're from Dublin, but I'm really excited when I first heard this story and read about it over the last couple of days. It's given me a little bit of a buzz, and I've no real attachment to the football club per se.
Just one other point to make. Sport can completely transcend sport in terms of what a facility can do for an area. And like, I'm hugely regretful that Galway developed Pearse Stadium and let Tuam go to ruins. And Tuam is an utterly deprived town, typical of a deprived town in rural Ireland that needed something. Galway didn't need anything, and I think Galway GAA made a colossal mistake there in basically developing. And Inchicore needs something like this. It really needs something. It's in danger of becoming a place that will just be almost like fall into nothingness. And it's also by the Lewis stop. It's a very good location for a ground. So there are an awful lot of positives as long as we can trust Kelleher's ambitions and that their good intentions are well-meaning.
I mean, you can want it to happen, but still have some questions about the manner in which it happens.
Absolutely.
I think Gareth Kelleher has built up enough stock in the game and shown that he is very, very dedicated to St. Pat's. I think the important part of this is it is very, very positive on the outside of it. When you touch the surface of it, it's kind of scratching underneath the surface, and the kind of evasiveness of, well, we're not going to tell you how much we're bidding, we're not going to tell you what the general cost is, we're not going to tell you when it'll be done. We don't have to. We're not going to tell you who else is backing. Gareth Kelleher is obviously a man St. Pat's fans are familiar with and are comfortable with, but he's not doing this alone. He mentioned there'll be other investors, and that's kind of where the questions come in. They need League of Ireland clubs in particular. They need to strengthen the community ties, particularly when they have so many clubs.
Look what Bows are doing.
Look what Bows are doing. It's so important to not be a hindrance on your community. I remember when Shells announced they were leaving, they apologised to the people from Condra for inconveniencing them for years. that's just the wrong attitude to have.
Totally.
You need to ingratiate yourself with your community, and you need to be seen as a vital part of it.
Yeah.
And
you need
to
be
have
woven in there, don't you?
Exactly.
Woven into it, yeah.
And to have more than just a football pitch there and 12,000 plastic seats, that would be very, very important to them.
Darren is going to be keeping abreast of this story as it goes on, and there's going to be an awful long way for this to run before we get to some kind of a conclusion. Will we have a brand spanking new 12,000-seater stadium in Inchicore in 5 or 6 years' time? The League of Ireland needs it. Dublin football probably needs it. We shall see. Darren, thanks a million. That was great stuff.
Cheers, Dave.
Johnny, Kenny, thanks so much. Yeah. Best of luck with the grade tomorrow. Enjoy the racing today, Johnny.
It's a done deal.
That's pretty much all from us here this morning in OTB AM. The lads are back on the radio tonight, of course. There's loads more across Off the Ball coming your way this weekend, and we'll be back on OTB AM on Monday morning. We're going to leave you with this, though. Clive Tyldesley was on Off the Ball last week. It was a really brilliant chat with Nathan, and the podcast is definitely well worth seeking out over on offtheball.com. We know that this is the weekend, the anniversary of the Hillsborough disaster in 1989, and a call of the OTB team has put together this video from Clive's piece. He's talking about Hillsborough and his personal experience of the tragedy ahead of the 29th anniversary this weekend.
2-3 days later, I was down at Anfield, and the whole press corps outside in the car park, and Anfield became the place where all of the families there was just a kind of, they were welcome. The doors were open. And the players, these guys who were 24, 20, we're talking about Ronnie Whelan and, guys who'd had absolutely no preparation in their lives to counsel anybody, who were living the life, and they were meeting the families on a daily basis. And I just got this message. I was standing outside in the car park. Somebody came out, one of the staff. This is probably the Wednesday or Thursday, and said, "Kenny wants to see you." So I thought, oh, God, what have I done? And I was ushered into the stadium, and Kenny was there in reception with Marina Dalglish, and he said, does the name Ian Whelan mean anything to you? And I said, no. And he said, you showed him round Radio City where I worked. He wanted to be a commentator. And I said, how old was he? He said, 15. I said, oh, yeah, yes, I remember him. And then it kind of dawned on me. Wait a minute, I know that name. Yeah. And he said, Wilf and Doris's parents are here, and you're his hero. And we call the players' lounge is full of these European Cup winning stars, and they wanted to meet me. And well, now I'm part of the now Hillsborough has arrived home. It's in my life, and I spent some time with them. And literally on the way out of the Players' Lounge, where all the families were with me, I saw a girl who I used to see in a nightclub in Birkenhead, Karen. I'll never forget her. And, it's just somebody who had sort of occasionally had a drink and a dance with. And I said, what are you doing here? And she said, just my dad. That's all she said, and just walked past me.
OTB AM.
In association with Air. Get Air Sport free with Air Broadband.